How's it going, Zach?
Oh, it's going well. How are you tonight, Aaron?
I'm doing good.
Are you ready to expand your understanding?
Yeah, a little bit, man. It's always good. You and I have good conversations. It'll be good. So, okay, so this is Expanded Understanding podcast, and Zach and I are going to be co-hosting this for the foreseeable future, and we're just going to ride that out. We'll have different guests on the show. Frank Castle might be on tonight, and tonight we're going to talk about the Bible or religious texts, psychology, and you being the placebo, or you being the placebo. I can hear your audio coming in through the background.
I gotta go change.
Okay. All right. I'll start rolling on the topic. So, okay. So the Bible and religious texts. So I'm just going to lay out here, go through a linear framework for a framework to go through the religious text or biblical text. It's a way that I went through it, and they lead to avenues of connection that, to me, so starting with a synopsis, the whole thing all relates back to your own psychology, whatever you believe, whatever belief system, whatever religious texts or archetypal metaphors or whatever you use for you. Ultimately, what are you using within your own psychology to bring the results that you desire? And if we're going to talk about generally desired results by human beings, that's to be more healthy, more healed, more whole, more functional in this life, so that you can live the life that you want to live, a life that, and I think for most people that comes with some general realities of, it's not so much how much money do I have, but do I have enough money or resources to live the life I want to live, and then whatever it takes to get there in some practical way. But putting and then traumas and generational habit patterns and things that would hinder us from actually living a life that where we can be present in our body and connected to ourselves in a myriad of ways. So the religious text dynamic. So I started out in the Christian church for the majority of my life. Now those, the framework within there as a general tool and framework, like there's still verses to this day that deeply resonate with me. So the verse, it says, be still and know that I am God. So to be still and to know, which is yada in Hebrew, which in the original Hebrew language, the picture images is an intimate knowing through the eye gate, through actual close, intimate knowledge and connection. So to know, be still, find stillness, to know, have an intimate knowledge of Elohim or God, that I am God, or that you are God, that we are little g gods. Jesus said to the Pharisees, he said, do not your own scriptures say that you are gods, little g gods, Elohim, which is plural. So if you're going to take it just with interpreting text within the text, then we're getting into religious debates within the 44,000 denominations who all have their own stream on it. So I'm just going to give you my take and through my experience with the text. And I know very intimately inside those dynamics, but this whole podcast and dynamic is literally, we're talking about those things, but expanding beyond just one belief system or one structure being the right way. It's really whatever works for you, because you are the placebo and you're the one who screws up all the studies because you got healed when you just ate a sugar pill. How does that happen? Right. So,
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what we end up like making our life out to be is that's what the story was, right?
Right. So your life's your sugar cube or lemons, right? And you figure it out, man. You create your reality. You're the placebo. So manifest the reality you want to see. So
can you teach me a good way to make lemonade out of those lemons?
Yeah. So here, let me show you how I made lemonades out of a religion or a belief system structure that actually brought me benefit and healing and wholeness and all these great things to my life as I went through it. But as I would continue to expand my understanding, just as my natural inclination to do, I would have occasionally hit walls within the construct because there wouldn't be a framework to explain some of my own experiences, right? Encounters with, there's enough of a framework within the Christian to understand angels and demons, to understand operating things beyond just the physical, but also very much the physical, the practical dynamics and practical ways to live a lifestyle where you're increasing, like we talked about yesterday, the fruits of the spirit, the love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. And that in those things, there's no law against those things. If you're pursuing those, increasing those in your life, there's nothing that's saying this is wrong, this is bad, even at a societal level, right? And there's only the negative dynamic when it's unbalanced, when you're too loving, or what we would think is love, but you're really enabling people, or you're allowing people to walk all over you. That's not love. That's where English words can be tricky. But as a general framework, it's a pretty good framework. So within the church, I was doing all those things. Now, as I began to expand out just through experiences and past relationship I was with, I was trying to understand her psychology and what was going on in dynamics beyond my own study and awareness. And so began to find different ministries within there that had been exploring people who'd been through some extreme SRA DID trauma. And that's satanic ritual abuse and dissociative identity disorder. So psychologically, they know that before the age of 7, before your brainwave state starts to switch over into a whole nother deal, that you can dissociate a psyche much easier before the age of 7, in complete dissociation, where you have the complete blackout of your primary presenter personality and embodying a fully different personality. So I was going through these podcasts and hearing their stories and seeing a lot of the resonances in what I was experiencing in my relationship. And but more than that, it wasn't just the psychology of it. It was also the spiritual dynamics, if you will, understanding like soul contract revocations, understanding epigenetic expression, our DNA, being able to articulate and voice proclamations and articulations, affirmations, all those kind of things, because they have psychological, physiological roots, regardless of the paradigm you're using. So when people, so one of the things that comes up sometimes, myself included, is, well, when I've had bad situations happen or demonic things happen, I call the name of Jesus and they go away, right? Which that happens. I know, I've done it. Now, to me, what I think is actually happening beyond just the surface level, and that's fine, is that we're the engine. We have the power. Our belief was that Jesus could make it go away. So when you believe what you're saying in the name of Jesus,
Sure.
that thing goes away. But you did it, right? But your
So
avenue
really more it's like
was
what
the
your
name,
belief in what you're saying rather than what you're saying.
or the belief in your intentions of what you're trying to do, no matter what you say or don't say. Like Neo, right? To be able to just stop the bullets with his hand. You don't have to say anything. Like, I think when we know in an energetic level and eventually on a physical level, I think that's true too. But
And
so in
when
putting
we
your
talk
intent,
about like that scene, like Neo, like what do you think they mean like that? Like, okay, so maybe there is the capability that we could like stop bullets with our mind, right? Like, but on a
yeah,
level that is more like practical to what we're actually doing in our life, like what is that a metaphorical representation of something that you feel that maybe you could do with your own mind?
yeah. So like being able to have control over our autonomic nervous system. So if we're
Sure,
going into states of anxiety or fear or major anything and overwhelming to the nervous system, knowing that through our breath, that we can literally bring stillness to our nervous system. So not even having to say words, or like in different yoga positions, somatic release, like we looked up yesterday, and different things where you can help your body find balance again in extreme states of stasis. But I think even on a psychological level, there's a way you don't have to do the poses. You don't even have to necessarily breathe. You can
sure.
have an awareness of your own psyche and your own sovereignty, for lack of better words, like that you're able to handle and process through calmly. Bring yourself to a state of internal calmness to process so you can respond to the situation that's at hand, not just react.
Sure. So kind of like maybe we could even simplify that and say like anything that's generating stillness. So it's kind of like a metaphor for the ability to generate stillness in your own reality.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so through the and here's what's cool about that verse, the be still and know that I am God. So one of the metaphors that I found that works really, really well is a
Uh-huh.
computer. So if our CPU is our heart, and the, oh gosh, I haven't broken this down in a while. We'll just start with that before breaking into the RAM and all the other dynamics. So
Yeah.
they do this at CES, like down in California, where they'll try to overclock CPUs, right? So you can get the best overclock speeds and all the
Yeah.
stats. And to do that, what they do is they have to, or one of the ways they do that is they pour liquid nitrogen onto the CPU.
Yeah.
Because if you could, the theory being, and the proving to be through math and science and whatnot, that if you can get to infinite stillness, absolute zero, where there's no vibration of the atoms or whatever, you have a perfect conductor. So there's
Sure.
no heat output. So it's a perfect conductor. So literally, the more still you can become, the colder, the more you can bring that stillness internally, the more you
Hmm.
get close to infinite knowledge accessible to your own little
Here's
psyche.
something I always thought is interesting though, because like when we're talking about that, we're talking about bringing the vibration to nothing, and then in like New Age or spirituality, oftentimes they talk about becoming high vibe. Isn't like in that kind of function, isn't high vibe the opposite of stillness?
Right. So it's interesting. So like, because it does seem like a dichotomy or a dynamic that if you're really active, you're not necessarily still. And I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe we can parse this out. So the stillness is an internal disposition from that stillness. For me, I guess, okay, maybe it's coherence or stillness, a place where you can respond. So you can be very active, but if you're internally present and still or coherent, those choices are
Mhm.
still very present. Still, they're made from a place of response and from stillness, even if there's a lot of activity. So it's not so much the external dynamic, even though calming the external circumstances can help bring stillness internally. But when you can tap into that stillness internally 24/7, you
Sure.
don't necessarily need the external to match it.
So do you think that, because a lot of times like high vibes really more used for like just the way you feel, right? Or like the way that
Right.
you're, I mean, sometimes it gets applied to the way that you're like approaching reality, but so it's not necessarily an action, but more like a way of being. Do you feel like you
Yeah.
can be quote unquote high vibe and also be still, like simultaneously? Can I be
Yeah.
like so high vibe I'm still again? Or like how's that work?
I think probably the other way around, right? Like that they're inseparable from one another. So stillness is high vibe. It's not just again, it's not behavior modification, it's heart transformation. To use those words in that paradigm. So instead of just changing our actions externally, changing
Uh-huh.
the internal disposition so that the external actions naturally change on their own instead of just forcing ourselves into good habits to again to gain approval from ourselves that we're a good person because we incorporate these good habits, or you incorporating good habits for a time in a season to change your internal disposition
Sure,
permanently in
like are you
some way,
actually
shape, or
trying to
form.
get a result or just trying to like bolt on this new thing you think you're supposed to do? Is kind of what you
Totally.
mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, bolt on thing you think you're supposed to do, that doesn't work. Don't do that. Like that doesn't
No,
work.
not at all.
That's
And
that was
that,
the wrong way. I don't know how you think about that, but like never do that. Like,
yeah. Well, and that's within the Christian paradigm, understanding the dynamic of relationship versus religion. So the
hmm
dynamics I was always a part of understood that dynamic within any church, any construct. I imagine it's the same true for Muslims, for Buddhists, for really anybody. When you get into certain temples or denominations or certain churches, they're led by people in leadership who also are human beings who have their own issues potentially they haven't dealt with or other
Sure.
stuff going on. So it's
Yeah.
it's dealing with humans really, but um oh shoot, I totally lost my train of thought on that. Denominations, churches. Nope, totally gone. It'll come back, I'm sure. Now,
So
so
I mean the
I
thing
also
was
got
like the high vibe and the stillness, like still to me in a certain way they I mean, like I have a conceptualization inside of myself of how that ends up happening, but like I'm trying to I try to see it in some kind of logical visualization when I want to feel when I feel like I have a
okay.
knowing is like when I feel like my head in my mind I can create a logical like scientific diagram of how that's happening. When I do that, then I feel like I'm in the right place, but it takes me usually like learning a lot of shit in order to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
able to make that diagram and feel comfortable with it. But like I mean if you think about it's like waves, right? So if it gets high vibe enough and like the frequency is high enough, from a certain perspective that ends up just like looking like a flat line again, you know what I mean? And in a
totally,
certain way
absolutely.
any wave viewed from far enough away looks like a flat line, like right, like you have to be close enough in order to be able to perceive its variance. So I think
Yep.
at like a certain scale, no matter what vibe you were, no matter what the frequency or magnitude was, if I pull out far enough away from that, it looks like a flat line again. And in that kind
Right.
of like that, I guess you call it superposition, right? Like it could be like a really high vibe line, but it's
hmm
also simultaneously from out here just still a flat line. And that's like that in that superposition is where I think we can actually find that. I don't necessarily know how like you do that in your life or whatever, but it just kind of resolves the paradox because to me like that stillness is still nothing's happening. High vibe, that's a lot of stuff happening, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, so
So
then
they
one's probably the difference between internal disposition versus external action. I mean, with that sounds like that's where maybe the dissonance is on that dynamic, thinking high vibe, but also be still, as if they're dichotomous, and they're not. But I think they seem they can be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like that high vibe again, like we apply that to a lot of things. Maybe that means to you like you're doing a lot of things or having a lot of experiences, but to some people that really just means like they really like approach the world with a loving outlook. I've found in some
Totally.
situations.
Yeah.
So, I
I wonder. Okay, so let me process this through. So I wonder, and based on experiences with other people, obviously my own experiences, and observing and reflecting on my own psyche and whatnot. But like, it seems to me there's a decent amount of people in the world who are not high vibe in that sense, right? Just a lot internally chaotic, the way that you
Hmm.
describe. So opposite of that, right? There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of sense of just obligation, sense of just that the overwhelming intensity or something at a core level. Like they
Sure.
actually feel, I mean I felt that at different times, and I feel those things at times when they come up. But in general, as a baseline frequency for my existence, it feels very still internal, even as
Sure.
intensely active as I am, and positive and passionate and like all that stuff. And in different times I find that throughout the day, but it's more of I'm just aware of it. I'm aware that there's just stillness with me, so not much throws me off or not much gets me to a place where I'm just bored. I don't know. I'm very present in whatever I'm doing and finding value and at some form of education in whatever I'm doing.
Sure. But like so like but functionally for you, what do you think like functionally creates the space that a person is able to do that in? Like we always have like our specific story that we put on it, like I feel comfortable as long as I'm able to supply these things for myself and I have those things. But like what do you I think that we play like a role in like allowing it, because I've found a bunch of ways like in my life where regardless of how I was performing, like I like don't allow myself to be happy in the space or don't allow
Yeah.
myself to enjoy it. I keep on like looking for the next thing to overcome or something. So like that stillness, I've recognized like a lot of the times my problem with my stillness has been that I'm keeping myself busy, you know? But that
Yeah.
so what do we really in terms of that like, well, I guess in a certain way, the way that I'm breaking it down, like the question is like, do you just like become okay with not being busy, or do you have to like find things that you think are worth being busy with, or what is it that makes it so that it's like I'm still but I'm active?
Okay. So are you asking personally, or are you asking to try to just draw more out of the subject?
I mean, like personally to you, like I don't know
Yeah.
the answer to this question, so like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm interested in perspective.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Good answer too. Um, So okay, so another dynamic to balance out. Okay, so if instead of just focusing on stillness and trying to redescribe stillness, we can also describe something by contrast, right? So what isn't stillness? Not necessarily activity, but inside of me. So when do I know a place where I'm being busy? It sounds like we are describing kind of to avoid dealing with something, an emotion or just a reality, a circumstance that I just don't. It sucks that that is the way it is, and I'd rather not think about that shit right now.
Hmm.
Um, so when I'm one thing, there's self-awareness is such a huge dynamic. So I'm aware that I'm doing that, whereas I think sometimes we're not aware when we're distracting ourselves from something. So I take pride and value in knowing, at least being aware of where I'm avoiding something, just in my own internal place, right? And to me, that means there's a part of me that's not in coherence or stillness, because there's something that I'm avoiding looking at for whatever reason, even if it's just for a few hours, few minutes, few days, any in varying degrees. It's a spectrum,
Hmm.
right? And then when I find something, though, it's not often I avoid things for very long. It's like once I realize it's there, I realize that's the path forward in progression, just in my own life, my own psyche, my own health. I have to deal with it. I want to deal with it. I honor
Yeah,
dealing with anything, especially like when I'm trying to avoid something. It makes me that much more excited to deal with it because I don't feel like I have that too often, which is
sure.
great. And so
Is that
because
where
the more
you
you deal with
always
stuff,
were? Is that something that you feel like you turned into?
I think that's how I've always been, but that would the only constraints on that fundamental paradigm of mine or operating mode was the religious construct that I was in, because there were only so many way you could only, and I don't want to oversimplify this. I really want to do anytime I talk about it and the different dynamics, things can be funny. But in this dynamic, like there really are so many avenues within that dynamic to find expansion, find healing, find all these ways. For me,
Hmm.
the things I was experiencing, expanding into, what for other people are safe boundaries, basically whatever's laid out within the theology of 66 books and not outside of that, within what they approve of being the texts that are validated by God and preserved to
Sure.
actually make theology from and how we should live
Christianity
our
as
life.
the religion presents it.
Yes, as basically this is what the Bible says about itself, and it's not just their opinion. This is what the Bible, if you're going to use those six books, here's what it says. And that's ultimately
Yeah,
where some of the
just
biggest differences
alone.
I'll have with Christians is, yeah,
Sure.
the biggest difference is that they believe everything we need to know about eternity, God. You know, if I'm in the New Age deception now, that whole thing is based off of their interpretation internally of just 66 books, and that their life experiences match what they find in those books. I get it. I was a part of that. That they know how to deal with
Sure.
demons, all that kind of other whatever in their own psyche. They're beautiful families. They're beautiful people. It's really more of a psychological or a cognitive disagreement about the words and the framework in that book. See, I feel that framework I found a beautiful way within there for people to heal, and myself included. I've found even through the same dynamics in some Muslim groups or dynamics and other traditions. But really, that's what for me, then it ended up spreading into was that it's about psychology. It's about you. It's about you understanding you and you interpreting and being able to process. And then the physiology, myofascial release and somatic release, and how stuck emotions will get trapped in our bowels, like enemas and different things can cause massive emotional release because it literally can be trapped mucosal lining from traumas as a kid. You know, so like it's a human experience that we're experiencing. So however someone connects with their outside world is cool to me. I love the diversity of people,
Sure.
and when it's functional for them, how much better. Like think about this. I've thought about this a lot. There's a level of where everybody comes to the same answer, the same truth matters to some extent, right? You all agree on the same truth. We stop at red lights. We don't just do whatever we want at red lights or
Sure.
something
There's
like
like a
that, right? So
consensus agreement that seems to form.
right. But then uh oh shoot.
We all agree on the same truth, you were saying.
Yeah, but the story I was gonna tell or the thing.
Oh.
Okay, here's what it is. Here it is. Okay, so I was thinking about so like ask some kid, let's say in math class growing up, the teacher gives a problem on the board and you have to show your work, right? And let's say this kid gets the right answer, but their work is to most people is just insane. It's nonsensical, makes no sense. They're drawing shapes, they're doing this, da da da. The answer's 7,
Sure.
right? They
Yeah.
got the right
Very
answer.
very logical.
Does it matter how they got it though? Who cares? Especially if they can do that repetitively and consistently, then who cares? They're
Right.
getting the right answer just because they're not learning the way you did it,
Sure.
you know?
Sure. I had a huge problem in school with like not showing your work and stuff like that. Because just like I don't know, a lot of times I just like didn't need it. Like I just knew the answer. I don't
Right.
know.
Well, then that's where it can be oppressive in a sense, where you're forced to show your work, but not in a way, in the 1 or 2 ways they tell you you can do it.
Yeah,
When there's
specifically like this.
there,
It's really interesting too because like when Common Core math came out, like
right,
everybody went like, "Oh, this is so stupid. Who would do math like that?" And I like looked at it and I was like, "That's kind of no, that's pretty much how I do math in my head." Like I split it apart like that and then I add them together just because it makes it like simpler functions. For some reason, it's easier to order like that in my head. But like if I would have written out what I was doing in my head when I was in school, they would have told me I was wrong. But if I went back to school now at that same age and wrote out that way, I'd be doing like Common Core math perfectly. It's kind of weird.
totally. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Um, and so another dynamic, even in the Christian church. So even in this poster that I've got down here, which is, a man, like a crystal being breaking out of his mold or his flesh or the things that, make him dirty or bind him or hold him down. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
verse at the bottom. It's 2 Corinthians, and it talks about that once someone is in Christ, that we are no longer to look at them just after the flesh, but we see them after the spirit or after who they actually are, beyond just their nervous system programs or their
Mm-hmm.
cultural programming or upbringing, right? So you're able to see people at a soul level, if you will, because you're seeing beyond just the surface level programs and dynamics. And Christ, so when does someone have Christ in them? Right? There's that within Christians, that's a big deal. That's salvation point. That really
Sure.
matters that you can define that. But when do you define that from the outside? One, to me, it's metaphorical, it's archetypal. So it's not that simple. It's not like you have to have a Christ figure or an image of a new Christ consciousness frequency in your body. Like you can, if that works for you, fine. But when do you have Christ in you? And I think to me, it's something to the effect of like a self-checking thing. A beautiful person is someone who is healed enough to help another person heal themselves
Mm-hmm.
in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
Right. So really, it doesn't matter necessarily how you get there. but that we're progressing in that way in our lives, that we feel like we're able to heal, that we can have healthy relationships, not just intimate or partners relationships, but family relationships, work relationships. How do you deal with people? How do you deal with being treated poorly or just being annoyed with someone? All
Yeah,
those
I feel
little
like people in the modern
things.
day have really like normalized a pretty low functionality level inside of their relationships. It's like across the board, you know.
Right.
Like even though like what their expectation is for a good relationship, if I'm like to break that down, I'm like, I mean, like, is it really? Like that's like you're asking for a pretty meager diet there. It feels like to me, you know. And I
Right.
mean, like, you could say like maybe like my standards are high or something, but like to clarify, like I don't require every person in my life is like some gigantic dish that can overwhelmingly feed me with food. I like people for because they exist and I check them out for what they have. But like if your standard for a relationship is this that, you know, well, at least they cook dinner for me, and then like you're getting all this engagement to it, like is that really like, are these the kind of relationships you want to be in? Or like the standards of what a boss is in this day and age oftentimes, like, I don't know, I mean, I've had a lot of managers and bosses at different levels of operation and business in my life, and a lot of times, almost every time, I've had like 3 good bosses and like 300 bosses, you know what I mean?
Hmm. Right.
And that's from like the employee perspective. I'm only one belief, but I would say a good percentage of the other people who worked with me on the 297 bosses that were not good on that would agree that that boss was like problematic for a lot of reasons, you know. And it
Right.
seems to just be kind of like the standard, right? Like, do you
Mhm.
feel that, and this is totally like a biased opinion question, but do you feel that the average person, and it's like so subjective, Jesus, do you feel that the average person in this day and age holds themselves up to a high enough standard?
No, totally not. But I think a lot of it, so it's like, it's not about, well, somebody's better because they have higher standard or better in value as a human being. It's more, I think it's just people don't know what they don't know, man. Your expectations are created by your environment growing up or a deep knowingness, and both. It's usually a mixture
Sure.
of both, right? So, and you learn through life. So a lot of times we are expected, like our nervous system, our emotional, psychological dynamic learns the things that help us survive.
Mm-hmm.
So during some kind of trauma as a kid, or just your parents yelling, and if you're, a really sensitive child, that can be just as traumatic as them like screaming in your face and beating you, just them screaming at each other or whatever. It can affect the nervous system in ways that you dissociate, or something happens, you block that off in some way, you create some kind of response program to deal with that, to be the good child, to not, whatever, little things, minor things, or big overarching things. But if you're not aware that that's affecting you, then your expectations are created out of that dynamic. You learn to
Sure.
just be a participant in a relationship, so that, for example, where you're just doing the behaviors you need to do to not get yelled at, but at certain levels, you're not actually allowed to express and be yourself.
Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah, I feel people bail out on like they're learning about what's like basically possible for themselves too early, and as a byproduct of that,
totally.
they like their standards are actually like set pretty low. Like if they, as long as they like get the career and they have a family, like then they're doing a good job. And I
Hmm.
just it's not that I don't think those things are important. Like I think those things are cool, and if that's what you want to do with your life, I 100,000% support you. I just think there's like a lot
Hmm.
more to life too. I think you can do those things and you can do like 5,000 other things. And there's all kinds of
Right.
cool inner experiences and outer experiences that you can have, and just so many different ways to refine yourself that I just feel like the standard person, because you're, I mean, I think you're totally right. Like you don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So why don't they know about things that they could know about? And it's really what it must be to my mind, because they just like they stop looking for something new, like too soon, right? Like they
Yeah.
like at some point they're like this is everything, and like maybe it's only like 1%. Like I actually, I guess, like if I have like some kind of fear, which like I try to live like without fear, but if I was to say I like had a fear, one fear is that like that I will end up in a position where I'm actually only like 1% of what I could be, and believe I'm
Mm.
actually like operating beyond 100%. because I would just be
Right.
like totally comfortable with where I was and oh man, I'm crushing it, but I'm actually only like 1%. You know what I mean? That's like
Right.
in a weird way, like terrifying to me. You know,
Totally.
like,
Yeah.
'cause I would be so diminished from what I could be, but I would have no idea. You know?
Right. No, man, that makes perfect sense, and that uh, it's interesting that the dynamic of so when we're in pain, we're motivated to change, right? So,
Yeah.
whatever the situation is, if you spend all your money poorly or into bad habits and you lose your job and you lose your home or whatever, I mean, the pain eventually usually motivates us to change behavior.
Right.
But it's once you get to a place of neutrality, so things aren't painful every day anymore. Let's say it's worse than oh, no kidding. All right, Frank's been backstage for like 8 minutes. That's because he was scrolled down. Thanks for telling me, Frank. Hold on. All right, so it's all there. He is, Mr. Frank Castle. You good?
What's
Oh,
up?
no audio. There he is.
No audio.
What's up, man? No, you're
Can you
good.
hear
You're good.
me?
I hear you now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Excellente.
Aaron's
How
got to
you
fix
doing?
overlays. Hi, Frank. It's nice to meet you finally. I've watched a lot of your stuff, and I'm sure we've seen each other around. It's good to meet you, though.
It's nice to meet you too, Zach. I recognized you last night when you were doing the video. I was like, who the hell is that? And then I opened Facebook and you were right there. I was like, oh, it's my dude Zach. How you guys doing?
Yeah. Doing good, man. Chatting about the Bible and stuff.
I'd like to get your take on what we're
Yay.
talking about right now. Like we were just talking about like,
Yeah.
kind of the concept of the standards that the average person holds themselves to, and that maybe that average standard isn't so high. But what is the reasoning behind like what? So what we postulated that they kind of just like they don't know what they don't know, and so there's a certain level where you start to say like, okay, I'm good enough. But why is it that they end up kind of limiting that knowledge? You know what I mean? Is it because just like, well, like it is good enough somewhere, and that place is like with a white picket fence and a dog in like a house, and like you're good, right? Or is it because that's just like the only thing that they ever see, and they just cease to look? Like, what's your take on that?
It's probably a little bit of both of that, but up front for the majority, like on the flat front, it would be um, people are seeing other people, hearing what other people, they're shown by other people what they think they should have, do, say, be like, act like. So you're getting this weird dichotomy that's happening. And then you have someone like, let's say, one of us who are in that, and maybe you achieve. Like for me, I got signed, I was on stage with everyone, I did all that. I was not happy.
Mm-hmm.
They were not happy. Right? There was happy moments, but it
Right.
wasn't like a happy thing. So I'm like, I finally made it. This is it. This is what we all wanted. And everyone quit. It was like, I don't want this. This is literally what I don't want. So then you start to say, well, what else is there? And you start questioning it and you try to break free of that. Some people stay caught in the mundane though, right? And then you're
Sure.
constantly looking at the white picket fence and the guy with the nice car and the guy with the hot girl, and they're like, oh, you don't do it like this? Well, then you're beat.
Right.
I can't even talk to my cousin Dan, right? If it doesn't include Yeezys or some, I don't know what that's called, Yeezys, like their sneakers, with
Yeah.
his
Some shoes
weird
or
pink
something.
hat that's $300 and this, that, and the other. And he's like, dude, I look fresh. And I'm like, you're wearing skinny jeans and you're 250 pounds. You're 5'6", so it doesn't look good on you, right? You look like someone with blue air up your, and then and he's like, oh, check out this shirt, and I'm like, dude, it's pink. How much did that cost? So this is $480. So you can't even
Whoa.
get in a conversation edgewise to these guys. He's like, oh, I'm dressed head to toe fly. If you ain't like this, I'm not even going to concern myself with you. And his girl's looking at me going, and this is why I'm having trouble talking to you, because every time I bring up ayahuasca, here this comes along and comes and sits in the room with us. And I'm like,
Sure.
wow, so you got both of what you're talking about sitting in the room together dating,
Yeah. Do you feel
right? So
like a distance like that in a relationship is actually resolvable? Like that seems like a
I
big
don't know.
distance.
Yeah, yes. If the one that's a little out there, trapped in that society thing, like check my Yeezys, he's got to
Yeah.
want to,
Yeah.
right? And then the other person has to have a desire to stay with that person and think they could continue. Because if not,
Sure.
they're going to look you know, like you start doing yoga somewhere and your partner's not doing it, and they're just eating everything in the fridge, and you start pulling away from that attitude. And
Yeah.
then now you're in yoga, you're around all sweet, clean people, sexy people, and people that want to be healthy. And then someone gives you the eye. Oh, you're
Yeah.
here too for the same thing as me. And then all of a sudden it's right. It just happens.
Yeah.
And
Is
you're
Yeah.
that
like, well,
is
I'm
that
just
Frank?
pulling away
Frank,
from that old style now.
is that sex? Is that what
You
that
know
is?
what
Is that
that,
what your
you
way
know
of
what
saying?
that is. Yeah.
Then you know we do the thing. You know the thing.
You know, it makes people
Working.
feel good. Then they regret it later sometimes, but other times they don't give it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Right on.
You
yeah,
never
it
know
can be
until you
resolved.
know.
Yeah, exactly. So it's got to be every combination. So here's the thing: Source didn't come here to um, just be repetitive with this nonsense, right? What they're doing is they're seeing how far it goes in every direction. So
Hmm.
every one of us has a situation that's defined directly to us that could go in any which way, shape, or form. And it's like digging out every crevice. Let's see what's behind door number 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And it's constantly being revealed in these weird combinations, right? Infinite
Hmm.
combinations. So Source could witness it. And then people like us who are Source can sit down and go have this conversation and say, look how deep it goes here. Look how crazy it is over there. But we're like this, but we're trying to be not judgmental. It's just something we're aware of. And now we're trying to pull away from. So to understand the darkness, they would say, right? Source had to send us into the darkness. Like
Hmm.
you have to go to the deepest layer and then start walking around. You don't
Yeah.
just come right back up. You got to go down there and you got to carve a path so I can see what it means to be dark, right? I have to
Yeah.
experience it, witness it, so I understand. So then we can end it.
Yeah.
We can
I mean,
end the
like
dichotomy so there's
I
no
feel
more
like a lot
suffering.
of people have this experience that they're like trying to get back to source. Did you say like most people you talk to feel like they're getting back to it?
I feel like the majority of people on this planet that like do drugs, straight drugs, we're not going to say entheogens or nothing like that. They're just doing drugs.
Sure.
Is they call it escapism or then they add addiction to it. I did it. I didn't do everything. I did a lot of stuff. I partied a lot, right? The minute I
Uh-huh.
drank ayahuasca and smoked DMT, I
Sure.
realized that the entire time, whatever the drug was doing to me for the escapism or for the addiction was to really remove whatever I was feeling was non-separation. Like I was part
Uh-huh.
of something. I felt it more. I had more feeling, and and then ayahuasca was like, oh, let me open the tether from you to source. There's a choker on it. Boom, and it was like
Yeah.
my whole head was lit, and I go, oh, this is like, space coke, like on crack, cocaine. On and on and on. You just add them all, and it's not even touching. But this is how we're supposed to naturally feel. And they're like, well, yeah, you're source. You want
Yeah.
to feel like cocaine. You want to feel like Molly. You want to feel like this. You want to feel like that. You could just feel that way, but the intent is this. And I'm like, well, I don't.
Yeah.
I never did another thing again. I didn't do drugs for escapism at that point. I was like,
Right.
oh, I was missing my connection to source
Yeah.
the whole time. The minute that connection was made, I stepped away from everything.
Yeah.
Right.
I got
So
kind of
you're
like a
like
message at one point in
searching.
time that like really the whole reason I had been doing drugs is because they were like teaching me just how to basically be them, like how to just kind of have that state on my own and understand them and think like that and see my reality through that lens.
Yeah,
Okay, so
for sure.
you saying that's really interesting because my relationship with entheogens in this last year specifically, but even my mindset in studying them and going into them in the last few years, um, the most one of the simplest ways I can say that my greatest benefit and enjoyment of trying different psychedelics, entheogens, or whatever, is the additional added layer of perception that it gives me. Right. So you said learning the drug or being like the drug, or Frank, you're talking about it taking you to a place, but it's a place inside of you. It just is a vehicle to help. So we were talking about this yesterday too, that you can't feel something you've never felt before. Right. So it's so important, like our interdependent dynamic as a emotionally interdependent society in different ways. We all have and give and receive form and love with other humans in different ways and whatever. But if you've never been loved or treated well in a relationship, let alone with fathers or dynamics, but just in a relationship, then until you're treated well in a relationship, you don't know what that feels like. Right.
Yeah.
Or I find interesting that you can, once you've had enough positive experiences, so you know what it feels like to not feel something, you know what it is to feel that, and then to feel that in your body afterwards. And you do that enough times, I feel like you can, through meditations and things, you can visualize or see yourself in those positions and actually feel something you've never felt before without actually physically having to experience it. And the point is, it's the feeling in the body. So the different entheogens or Molly or any of that stuff, they're giving you different overlays, additional perceptions that seems to me would make sense, that when you in this body, in this lifetime, that you feel a resonance of that thing, even if you've never experienced it in this lifetime before. Like Lucy, for example, doing that recently. I've done it several times recently. And every time it's like when I that overlay comes in on my physical vessel, my psychology, my processing of things, everything feels right. I've been here forever. Like I've done this in many, I mean, the best metaphor I can come up with, whether we want to believe it or not, whatever, but like, is that I've done this in many, many lifetimes. It's like walking into a room and you're just like, and you dawned on you, this is a friend's house you used to go to all the time as a kid, and massive memories come flooding back, and you just there's an actual resonance there. And so then also though, being in that experience, and like the same thing you were saying, Frank, too, and then, or you guys are both saying it, that's the whole thing's interesting. So then finding at times when I was thinking about doing DMT, but I didn't have it on me or in the moment or something. So instead, at the very least, to prep before I did that, I thought I'd start meditating, put in some frankincense and resins, and feeling back into the frequency of DMT, just for that frequency and what it feels like in my body, and went through an experience that was pretty much all DMT experience, right? So I think we are the placebo, that we create our reality. It depends on where we choose to put our focus and our awareness, because energy flows where attention goes. Bruce Lipton.
Absolutely. You know what's crazy? Ayahuasca said to me day one, your job or your purpose is to become me, right? You want to feel like something, right? So what is it like to feel like this? And remember, we talked about this. When you eat mushrooms, you get that trippy feeling, right? It's really weird. It's alien. It's like you're walking through this and you're like, I don't know what's happening to me. Something. So I started embracing that and saying to myself, well, you guys keep telling me we're supposed to feel like this all the time. So I'm going to stop saying this is the yucky feeling that's passing me through and say I'm changing my frequency. This is what I should feel like all the time. And this other thing occurred where they're like, you feel what you're feeling. I'm like, this is amazing. This is the greatest thing ever. And they're like, okay, so now if you want to feel like you're doing a drug, think about Molly. And then you're like, oh, I know what Molly tastes like and what it makes me feel like. Boom. And then all of a sudden, it's like you took a giant hit of Molly. Mm-hmm. You're just doing it. Right. And I've had like cocaine flashbacks, right? But Aya was showing me like, oh, you want to feel cocaine? Is that what you want to feel? Here, just feel it. And just remember what it felt like. Oh. And then I was like, holy wow. Oh my. Oh. And it was like I was busting lines off the table or something for that moment. Yeah. And then it stopped. And then she was like, you can just do that. Is that what you want? And I was like, oh, I don't like that feeling no more. I prefer the feeling of feeling like when I'm like in here with you, like that awareness level where you're seeing in 360 degrees and it's just out of control. I'm like, right. I'm built for that. Right. So I don't even, I see them as little jump off points. Yeah. Awareness through the lens and everything. But we are so much more. So to experience them, all roads lead to Oz, right? We were talking about that earlier too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You could do Molly and have an experience. So I met Zach not many nights ago, maybe like 6 nights ago. I had an experience where I would like to say guys on a ship contacted me while I was sitting in my backyard. I mean, they literally came through. It was 100%. And I noticed some people were on the ship that I knew from the Fearless family. And then as I was looking, I was just turning my head and he was staring at me and he's like, no, you're my contact, right? So they're here and then we're all making contact. This is like a big meeting, but it's interesting what you chose to do this evening to get here, to hit the frequency. And I was like, oh, what's going on? He goes, I was with you when you chose. I opened the little box. There was a little bit of Molly. There was a little bit of mushrooms. And I said, no, I'm going to do Molly tonight. They're like, the Molly hits a frequency note, right? So I have to hit that note with you. You are rising in frequency, whichever one you do. It's your choice. It doesn't matter. But I have to have this meeting with you. So we're going to hit these notes. So when I was in the middle of my first, and I was just out there looking around and boom, it happened. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? And then they just explained it to me. And he found it interesting that I chose Molly over the mushrooms that one night. He's like, I was standing right behind you watching you. He goes, and you made a choice. And I said, okay, tune into him this way. Boom. And then as soon as you walked outside and it started hitting you, the meeting started. I was like, yo, that's crazy on top of crazy, but I love it.
Yeah.
So all roads can take you there if, I guess, appropriated, I guess, with the right intent in your head.
Hmm.
You know,
Have you
things
had
you
like
get to
pretty
try and
visionary states
experience.
that you've generated just through meditation and stuff too, like with no drug?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best. That's what you're supposed to do. So you're not supposed to do the drug, and you're supposed to become the pathway that the drug would put you on. Like you're
Sure.
literally, so as you're going through this and you go into meditations, maybe you'll smoke a little cannabis, right? So then you'll sit down and the meditation just starts turning into way more than it's ever been. If you've been doing the
Mm.
work, you already have the neural pathways designed to get you there. So it's like then now you're doing the regular work. You're supposed to breathe, sit in the sun, and do your thing, and then boop, it just happens. So you're
Hmm.
getting the same contact. Although I feel at times, especially recently, the newer things that have been happening to me have been just as strong as any experience, which is freaking me out a little bit. Because when you drink a hard dose of Aya and it's crazy, how could that be like that when I'm just out in the sun? How could something just walk up and
Yeah.
start talking? Or how can I be? I was telling Aaron this. I was seeing last night as if twinkle lights were everywhere. I thought I was seeing stars flashing, and I kept
Yeah.
clearing my eyes. I used Visine, and then it looked like little bubbles, little tiny bubbles moving through the lights. And I'm going, what's going on? What is that? And they're like, the next step is the when we talk about removing the matrix and all that, it's the awareness that you were trapped in, you're no longer trapped in. So
Yeah.
as it takes time, you don't just, oh, now you can see. That's what the plant medicines are for, to get you prepared for that. But it's a long, slow process. Although you guys are in for the long, slow process has been your lifetimes. Now
Sure.
we're here, right? So it's happening so much faster, so much quicker. So it's like boom, one thing after another, after another, after another, to get you set up and ready, prepared for that moment and the ultimate timeline, the optimum timeline that you've been seeking since day one. So you have to, take those journeys, take those paths, then get out there, do the hard work, whatever that is to you. That's noticing your, say you go food shopping and you're the guy that leaves the cart in the middle of the floor, just kind of pushes it
Yeah.
and leaves it.
So like actual
Okay.
integrative work.
Right. Like you're blocking everybody, you're causing all kinds of problems. Say you do that while you're driving, say you do that with people, say you interrupt people that way or whatever. Those are all issues. If
Hmm.
you're not aware of those issues and you're not becoming aware of those issues and people are making you aware of those issues, you're not doing the work.
Yeah.
Because the work, as you start doing it, you realize you're picking your nose. Then you're touching your face. Then you're grabbing your balls. Then you're shaking hands on you. And you're like, whoa, 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 time out, time out, time out.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I thought I was just going with the flow and I realized I'm a disgusting pig. Right. And then you start
Well,
changing.
going with the
Right.
flow
Yeah.
just taught us that. Yes. It's good.
Right. If I get
No
up
doubt.
on you and I'm like this and you're like, dude, your fucking beard smells like, whatever,
Yeah.
and you don't go and wash that thing, you're nasty. So you're not doing the
Yeah.
work. And these are just small examples. If you just look at the thing on the floor and go, I'll get it later, you're not
Hmm.
doing the work. So you're
Yeah.
telling me if I pick up the stuff off the floor and I'm like, well, would you, I don't know if I curse, but would you sit and poop?
Yeah, it's fine.
Would you not change your diaper?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't wear a diaper, whatever. But it's the concept is the same. It's poop.
Yeah.
You're being poop container.
Yeah.
Right? So you walk around,
Yeah.
or you're gonna flick your ash on the floor. You're just gonna leave it there. You're just gonna.
Yeah.
You did see the ashtray right there. That unawareness is what gets us in trouble. The
Sure.
awareness of and the responsibility to that awareness. And people are like, well, I gotta be responsible for every moment. I'm doing it. It's not as hard as people think. And then once you
Yeah.
start doing it, it's fun because what else have you been doing? You've been trapped the whole time. So the
Yeah.
guard comes down. This is what I was getting at. And you start to see the twinkle lights. That's you breaking through the matrix to the true vision, right? Because everyone's like,
Yeah.
you look at the stars, you look at the sky, it's all fake, it's all this, it's all that. There's a dome and there's a firmament and there's they talk about all this
Sure.
stuff, and it's like, no, you're in a trap, right? So if I took
Yeah.
a planet and then put like a glass bubble around you that you can't
Yeah.
see, and that's what's trapping you in here. It's not allowing you to get to the fifth density, sixth density. You're going to tell me, oh, there's a firmament, there's this, there's that. You're going to tell me all this stuff. That cracks open, and we're able to see. What do you see? Right? Because
Yeah.
everything was in a fake representation was in this snow globe with you.
Sure.
And then it opens, and then the reality, the organic consciousness flows through, and ultimate freedom is beyond the crack.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
But
kind of
yet
like what's
you're like,
beyond
oh,
the story, but not a specific story. The stories.
right? Like you can't even
Frank,
start
Frank,
the story
Frank.
is so
So right actually on the stories, it's a perfect segue here. So even the theme of the religious texts or the Bible, the different ancient traditions, and psychology, and you are the placebo. But what are your experiences? Because you don't have experiences, not so much the church dynamic. You're in there a little bit when you're younger in that dynamic, but your experiences primarily with those archetypes would be the Egyptian god set, right?
well,
Primarily
yeah, it
in the Hindu
worked
gods.
through Egyptians,
So
Indian.
so explain to me then, I guess, for your, since when you started working with them through, the different ayahuasca and those different encounters, but those are the entities, those are the specific forms, not the Greek gods, not the Norse gods, like it's these gods. Why do you think that was? And like maybe just process that in hindsight now, but also that dynamic. Why do you
All right,
think that was
so
that?
my how do I explain this? So one, I had a anti-religious internal thing going on. So they were
Mhm.
not going to bring Jesus in front of me or nothing like that. Because
Right.
that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
the fight right there. I'd have a fist fight with him right there on the spot. I would have dropped
Yeah.
Space
Yeah.
Jesus like he's like yesterday's luggage. However,
Yeah. You will see.
bird-headed Ra comes in. Well,
Yeah.
here's the thing. They told me we're all the same. We're all different entities, one degree or another, but a lot of the entities in Egyptian, in Greek, in Roman, in all the different things are the same guy. Like when I met Lucifer, I said, "You look like Aquaman to a degree." He had the thing, right? The pitchfork or
Yeah.
whatever. But he was in source. So I'm like, I thought you can't go in there. That's what I asked him. I thought you can't go in. What are you, the devil? You look like Aquaman though. What are you, Poseidon? And he goes, "You know me by many names."
Yeah.
And I said, "Wait, you're Poseidon?" And he was like, "Look at me." And then I said, "Well, he's king of the water or whatever." And then I go, "Where's the fuck? Where's the water?" And he goes, "Everything is water." And then it just started moving, and I realized we were in hyperfluid, like that.
Mm.
That when you're moving um, like that from distance to distance or whatever, point to point, when you smoke DMT, you think, what are you, a ghost just floating around in the ether? But you're like, well, what actually makes up these energies? And it's water. It's a fluid of some kind.
Yeah,
Because
it works like a superfluid.
they were explaining to me here, we're being pumped with it. We don't realize it. We're like in scuba suits,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? So they were showing me, like, because when I'm like, oh, I'm having a hard time breathing. I don't know what's happening. They put this thing on me, and it went to the source,
Yeah, it's
like a
crazy
mask,
from
and they
like just
pumped
like
it.
straight up science too. Like we shouldn't be able to have bubbles if we're not in like in somewhat aqueous structure. Like I don't remember the exact science behind it, but bubbles
Huh.
basically shouldn't be happening, and they
But
do.
it's I'm telling you, it's a hyperfluid. When I was passing through the hyperspace dimensional things, and it was slick, like I was skating. It was like you're flying naturally, but they're like, what do you think you're doing? Like, let's talk about it for a second. You're flying. You get your hands out. What do you feel? And I'm like, I could feel the energy, and I feel movement, like I could just take off. What is that though? They're
Mhm.
like oil, like you slipped on oil and you're
Mhm.
or on ice skates. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, but more. And they're like, you're in a hyperfluid, a non-restrictive, there's no friction to it, nothing. It's
Yeah,
everywhere. It's just everything.
yeah,
So I'm like, holy shit. And then we're dipped into this area, and we're still being pumped with that stuff while we're in this area. And you think this area is, oh, you're just breathing. It's just air. It's just air. Wait till awareness goes from 4% to 50% and see what you think you're inhaling, because we think we're just
sure.
taking the sun. But Aaron and I, perhaps you know as well, when you're out in the sun, what the sun's rays look like when you're under a substance. It's
Yeah,
the
there's
sun's
there's more
rays.
going on than the average
They're
bear gives it
bars.
credit for.
there's there are bars and lines like you're playing Guitar Hero, right? And they're filled with information packets. You just see like Atlantean writing, light language, all kinds of stuff, and you're just eating it. It's hitting you, and your body's going. Your head's pulsating where that pipe is that runs straight down is just gobbling that stuff up, and it's information. So you literally eat information. You're not actually taking the sun, but I'm
Yeah.
getting a
Sure.
tan. Yeah, but you're eating information. That's what it
Yeah,
does
it's
to you.
it's a
That's
consumption
the
method.
dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got all this craziness going on around us. So it's all coming to the giant head right now as we're becoming aware of this stuff, and we're starting to pick
Yeah.
it up. So the different characters throughout history, throughout time, the Horus character Said, we're you from the future. We're your future self. We're not actually from the future. We're not in time. We've already done all this. So we're out here trying to help you get over here. So I was like, okay, they didn't give me any religious kind of tone.
Yeah.
Then I met Shiva and all those guys, right? They were playing it cool, showing me all kinds of stuff. And I said, hey, what's up with you? And what's up with Horus? Just kind of curious. Do you know Ra? Do you know those guys? Because now I'm trying to put this together. Turns out they're ETs from another matrix that came here and went to war with them. That's that big war where lightning bolts are being launched into the sky and this and that. Those guys were really here. Everyone got trapped in Earth's density. You get caught in the reincarnation cycle. You're stuck here until that matrix, that overlay is removed. So everyone started becoming human. So they had to spiritually learn to become friends again. Like, we can't go to war. We can't go to this. If you ask these characters, ask Hanuman, you walking around with that giant mace, who are you hitting with that? Who are you swinging that with? Right? You see Archangel Michael with his sword. Who are you sticking with that sword? Well, what's up with the weapons?
Yeah, they're all geared up for battle.
Everyone's geared up for battle and war, and the ones that aren't are the ones that are trying. The masters are trying to teach you. You are the weapon. It's you. You don't need a sword or a shield. You walk naked in there. Let them come at you. They're going to stop. They're not going to have to move or do. You're going to take a breath and go, greetings, and they're going to go.
Yeah, on a certain level, you're not only even just the weapon, but you're actually even just the battlefield, and both sides fighting the battle. And
yes, I had an argument with Anki, right, who claims he's actually my father. He says the Yankee is a title, so that's not his real name, but he's the Yankee. Multiple brothers, and he's like, I'm literally your father. And he comes here in war outfits, right? Like they're ready to go at it. He comes here with all the brothers, and I'm like, I'm not into this. And they're like, well, you are the horse. Whatever that means to you, Frank, that's you. So the mantle of Enki goes to you. And I said, I don't even know what this is. So I'm not going to argue with you guys. The answer's no. I don't care. So he goes, but you're my son. Literally, you've come from me. You're my DNA. And I said, whatever you did with your DNA, however you guys have sex, and it squirts out, Frank, that's the creator. So I'm your daddy, son. Okay, I'm the father. So see, that's how this shit works here. You pop out a kid, you're like, oh, I'm the dad. It's like, no, I'm the father. Right? See how that works. You just birthed me into the place. And I don't even know who you are, where you're from. I get the idea. But I'm sitting here naked in the sun, and you show up with 7 other people ready to, in full war battle. Like, remember your armor. Remember this. I've got it tattooed on me. I didn't forget. I don't know why I put the armor on. I have my reasons, but it was from being attacked and I had my shoulder ripped off. So I had the armor built on here. They saw it. They're like, oh, he does remember who he is. I'm like, well, I didn't know that this had to do with you at all. However, what I'm doing here has to do with me, not you. So whatever decisions you said I had to do when I came here, so I can be on some cloud while you float in as Anu or whatever crazy bullshit you guys have masked up for the fucking people here, the answer is no. Right? Right here. No deal. We'll go Schwarzenegger, old school 80s on you. I don't think so.
Let's tie in.
Right?
And then, okay, so it's perfect. You said Anu coming in on a cloud, whatever plans they have here, right? Okay, so in the Bible, there's he's part of, I don't know if he's excommunicated or he left. He might have got at one point excommunicated recently. He's like in his 80s from the Vatican. He's one of the bishops, but he's written like 20 books. He spent his life studying the scriptures, right? And the additional texts they have in the Vatican, because that's what they get to do. Well, he released a book. I'll have to try to remember, find it and link it afterwards or something. But not too long ago, going through the original Hebrew text, and he traces back through, and it gets into the specifics. But the Anukim, Anunnaki, they trace back to basically he ties it all back to the original Mesopotamian stories. So it's not this separate thing. Christianity is a separate thing, this dynamic. He traces it back through Anu and Anukim and that bloodline. And then
right, for sure. Now,
go ahead.
Check it out. This is the kind of characters they are. This is Anu. You ready? Or Anki, however you want to put it. They programmed a part of this matrix and left us in here and watched us, right? He programmed himself as God. That's him, right? But he put himself right out there. So you strive to go. And the closer you get, the further you are to him.
Yeah, I get it. That's what you're saying.
For him.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would take that guy and choke him until he's not breathing anymore for doing it. I'd be like, "What are you doing? You're God. You're a sixth density being at best. At best. I'm coming from 15, right? And the octaves are 12, right? So I'm coming from 3 above here. You're my son.
Yeah.
How dare you put this in? So then these guys, us humans, will look to that and strive to chase the light that you see behind me forever. The snake chasing its own. You never catch it because he didn't put it. It's not in the timeline. It's outside of it. We went to it. People are like, you can't get that. You can't touch it. You'll never get to the source outside the. Man, I walked right up to that thing, grabbed it, said, "Oh, look who it is. It's him." And they're programming our belief system into the structure of the matrix. So we do chase it. I'm like, you guys are terrible. That's between that, the reptilians, the Greys working for them, any archonic entities, demons, this, that. You guys are really, you did that and you dropped us in here in the 4% awareness. So you can what? What can you do? So Anu could come in on the cloud and save the day, right? Save the day. And it's like, no, that's a piece of the experiment. You're not the whole experiment. Just remember that. You guys wanted source in a body. That's what you wanted, right? And then you wanted control over it. But you can't control the ultimate programmer. So we go in the bodies and it's programmed and it sucks. And then lifetime. Oops, ayahuasca's there. Magic mushrooms, ayahuasca, magic mushroom, a lifetime after lifetime. And then boom, we just open randomly. No Jesus character. You're old Jesus. See, the characters led me through all these pantheons back to space Jesus. Right. So when I met Jesus, it was the space Jesus. It was the weirdest situation. I was holding my cat in the garden. My cat was kissing me, and then the bird started. I was telling Aaron, the bird started singing like it was like a real song. Like, it was beautiful, and I'm like, wow, the birds are really kicking it today. I was kissing my cat, and I turned around, and he was right there. He's like, hey, you're gonna let me in? And I was like, oh. And he said to me, listen. So I'll keep the conversation short with it. But he was like, everything they ever wrote about me, whatever. I don't really want you specifically to concentrate on any of that. You can do everything I did and can do, and so much more. So much more. I didn't get to do any of the stuff that you're going to get to do. But I'm here as the guy that show you that you can do it, not as the son of God. As the son of the son.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what? So Aaron and I do this all day. Son, what up, my son? Right? And he's like, my son. And then I look at the sun and I go, my son.
Yeah, you're old school hip hop. You probably remember the sample. I don't call you son because you're young. It's because you shine like one.
Yeah.
I've been saying that shit all my life.
You know, it's funny too because in hip hop back in the day, everyone used to call themselves gods. What's up, God? What's up, God?
Yeah, what's up, God?
I'll be like,
fuck him, the God.
What do you? Right. So then when they explained that to me from the inside, I was like, oh, you guys are like metaphysically awesome, whatever. Right. So I just let that go. Then 5 years ago, that all changed. Right. 6 years ago, it was like, oh, that's what they meant. Like, I felt like I was late to the game. That's why in the last set of years, I've been just exploding outward because I'm covering all that distance right now.
Dude.
Because our purpose is to transform now.
I feel exactly the same way, right? Because like the last 5-6 years, so like, about the time I started accelerating too, okay, so part of my journey, so I 9 months before my 30th birthday is when things started really speeding up for me. And during that process, so I have borderline narcolepsy disorder, and I was taking Adderall. I was taking up to 9 20-milligram pills a day, right, to function. Okay, and that's like the function. Part of it was because the relationship I was in, the only time we could be together, it just left me very little time to sleep if I was going to have any good relational time with her. So I chose to diminish sleep because of my borderline narcolepsy. Even on the Adderall, I'd take naps at times, and they're deeply refreshing. I go right into REM within into Delta within 2.5 minutes. Anyway, so so I have that dynamic there. So, but that went on for years. And during that time, though, when our relationship was improving as much as it could, based on her willingness to engage that, I was exploring everything else. And so I was spending all those Adderall-ridden hours. And here's what's interesting. You said this before, Frank. So I don't know if this came up then, but I don't know if I told you in the moment. You said about with mushrooms one time that they told you or realized you're like, I want to feel like this all the time. They're like, you should. This is how people should feel. Like, we're getting you back to that in a sense because you don't need us or whatever. this is how you should feel, right? I had the same thing with Adderall. I remember feeling, this was a conversation at the time with the Lord or the Father in my paradigm, but it was with myself, my spirit, my higher self as I know it now. And I was like, God, this just feels right though. Like for me, even because the narcolepsy thing is legitimate. I had a lot more than maybe I needed, but whatever, that feeling when you're on, when I find that place with Adderall, that it's like, this is how, I just knew this was right. This is how it's supposed to function. But I also believe I should be able to do that without it. And I know all the negative side effects just from the pharmaceutical itself and a lot of stuff. So I didn't want any of that in my system anymore. And I wanted to be able to reorient my body. It takes like 6 years sometimes to get the trace heavy metals and effects of that out of the system. So I haven't been on that for over a year. But during that time, I learned to read at double speed and to listen to audio stuff like your podcast when I found you, Frank. When I found you, man, that was like, I went back to, so I heard you on Chris Geo's show on the Beyond the Veil, and you were telling your story with the reptilians and then just blasting past them beyond the dimension that they even thought existed, because this whole dynamic we're talking about now about being the creator, right? But when you said that story, everything in my soul was like, yes, like that's true, right? I knew it, man. And then I found your podcast and listened on double speed through all of them. I just caught up, right? Just went
That's
through all of
crazy.
them, caught up to the lives. I did it in a weekend too. It was on Memorial Day weekends, like in May. I remember because I had a long weekend driving around for the doing checks, and I just listened to everything, the whole season, all like, I don't know where you're at, some 250 episodes or something at that point, or I don't know. I just plowed through them, man. But I don't know if I had a
That's
point in all that.
gangsta, dude.
Yeah, but that's that they mentioned this part. So the Adderall said to me that, or
Last
my spirit said that to me too, that this is how you're supposed to be. It is how you're supposed to be, but it's not a dependence on the drug. I feel like it's a reminder to your soul, to remind your ego, who only knows what it experiences and what it's seen in other people. All media, everything only shows us people living 80 to 100 years. It's amazing when they live longer, but there's no real key to living longer, and most people don't. But if we define our beliefs or define our direction only based on experiences, well, then you're only going to get something as good as your last experience. Like, you got to believe for things beyond what you've experienced because of intuitive knowing, or gaining a vision.
imagination is key,
Yeah. The
right? So
Bible
check it out.
says,
The mushrooms. Yeah. Listen,
do
the
it.
mushrooms were like, you're us. You're literally us, right? So now I'm looking at the
Yeah.
mushroom on the inside at that lower micro level, and it looks like neural pathways, right? So I'm like, yo, that looks like neural pathways. They're like, they are. Yours need to match ours, but you look exactly like us, except it looked like old highways that weren't being used, construction and all kinds of weird shit.
Yeah.
And then that started getting cleared, and boom, 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 and now I can think of better experiences to have.
Yeah.
Even if the thought was better than anything I've ever thought of, get to the point of that thought, it starts to happen, and it's better than what you could have expected because you had faith in the belief that it made me feel good, and the structure was all there, and then you
Right.
went with it, and boom, it explodes into a big thing. So there's, in other words, no matter how prepared you are, this is always going to surprise you. It's always going to take you to another level. There's not going to be a base level. I mean, a roof on these levels,
Yeah.
right? There is none. And it's hard to believe that. It's hard to understand that. So as you start believing in you, and you believe in the events that could take place and the changes that could be made, you start changing into that physically and start becoming aware and then witnessing it. And those experiences start blowing up. And then, I mean, I'm standing right here going, hey, I want to choke out Anu. Like, who could say that? Who could say
Right.
that the Anki went to them and said whatever? But I would have never been able to do that. I would and say no unless I've been going boom, 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 trying to grow that, become the mycelium, right? Become that
Yeah.
again. Because let me get into this and have these experiences because I want more. But why do I want more? Because it has to be real. Why does it have to be real? Because I said so. That's why. Because I said so,
Yeah.
right? And then boom, yeah, not show me the magic. Now, a lot of people listen to me. They're like, yeah, whatever. And they go, show it to me. I go, I can't show it to you. You have to say, I'm ready. Show me. I'm ready. Show
No
me.
doubt.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe, please. And I'm grateful in there somewhere as well. And then the universe
Yeah.
starts just throwing magic in your face. It starts with the 1111. It starts with the ultimate synchronicity. One of the guys I worked with from day one, my partner, he still has a problem with understanding, but he doesn't how the universe works. He's like, I didn't have the money for the house. We were getting kicked out of a house, but this house was perfect, but it was an hour and a half away, and we have no money. Then this happened, then this happened. But then, right when I was like, well, I guess we're renting, I get a phone call. The relative died. The relative left me the exact amount of money I needed to make to put down on the house I actually wanted to make it acceptable for us to live there, so I could pay for the bills without having to worry about everybody else working. He was like,
Yeah.
it was like magic.
Yeah.
And I was like, please, man, that's you, bro. That's you and your belief system and your structure, lining everything up in the universe, getting it all ready, and then you having a belief system and structure that you are worthy of this. You
Totally.
can't lift Thor's hammer,
So do you
right?
really
And
do you
then
think
that
that's
then it
probably
just
like the real central thing of all of it, as far as like us receiving, maybe tapping into more of our experience or doing better ourselves, is really just like recognizing that you're actually worthy of,
well, you're
going
abundance
beyond
all the
whatever
time.
ceiling you perceive or whatever.
Yeah, well, you're abundance all the time, and you're always on. Like you're literally made of that. So it's only your belief
Yeah.
system that gets in the way, right? So
Yeah, I would
then
agree with
you
that.
go,
Yeah.
I want to make, I don't know, a phone out of thin air, right? And then you
Hmm.
can't, doesn't work. You can't do that. And you're just, whatever. You're hitting these walls. You have to start to say to yourself, yes. But what'll happen before the phone develops into your hand and pops out of your hand? Boop, boop, look, phone. Someone might walk by and be like, yo, I got this for you. I was thinking
Yeah.
about you. And just hand
Yeah.
you a phone,
Yeah.
right? Because that's how this works, right? The money comes through somehow. I don't know. It just came through and boom, saved the day,
Sure.
Right.
right?
So that's
And
so that's in the Christian dynamic, that's living by faith, right? So there's stories that I
that,
heard. So like the faith stories. There's another verse: faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Or you can say that as the actions, spoken actions, or declarations of a God in human form, which is all of us. In my opinion, it's just whether how much you realize it or not, and realize that doesn't mean some arrogant, crazy thing. It's like, oh, once you realize, anyway, we've talked about it, once you realize you're all God, it just kind of makes sense. And then you can start treating people better, on some
yeah,
level. You just perceive them differently. But, uh,
right. Like right now, we're all angry. But you and I were just talking earlier about how I don't want to be the lesson to my father, because then I got to come back in the reincarnation cycle. I'm not reincarnating. So what am I going to come back here for nothing? Like I just let it all go. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to love you, and just I'm not gonna break your chops. I'm not gonna be like, you shouldn't do this or you have to do this to get
Right.
there. No, I love you.
right.
I love you. You need something, I'm here, right? And then just take it from there. It's got to be new, because everything needs to change, right? Everybody's afraid of change. It's like, well, how do you expect anything to work unless you
Sure.
take the change? Or is it not manly to go, Aaron, Zach, I love you guys. I love you, and I wish I could hug yous right now. Oh,
When I
Frank's
first started
getting
like
gay on
engaging
air.
hard, I was so surprised by how scared people were to say I love you. I
Everyone.
mean, like, I realized in a certain way I was definitely like projecting myself in the first place because I was hesitant about it still. But
Yeah.
even after I feel like I got past that and I was totally okay with it, like, well, still today, like I say I love you to people and they feel very pressured to say it back, and sometimes that pressure cracks them, you know what I mean? And then, but you can
Yeah.
feel this person being like, oh, I love you too. Like, they
Guys
feel so
around here
weirded
want to
out.
fight me because you're
Sure.
like, yo, man, what's up? I love you, man. Now they don't want to fight me. Now they're like, oh, this guy's the best. Every time I see you, this guy's like super positive. And I'm like, man, I have a hard day just like everyone else. But yeah, it's good to see you. What's
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
man? Love you. Now it's yeah, but like 4 years ago, they would like circle around me and be like, yo, what's wrong? What's wrong with you, bro? Call me all
Yeah.
kinds of stupid things. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll still fight everyone here. I'm like, don't mistake me for being nice, for not. I still like a good, ass kicking once in a while. You guys want to fight? And they're like, no, we're just making sure you're okay. And I'm like, oh, you mean being a real man? So it scares you, being a real man, holding a door open for a girl. Does that bother you too? Is it helping someone with packages or across the street or open the door? Like, where does this start and stop for you guys? Because
Right.
Yeah.
mine just keeps going. And they're like, oh, so they talk about being the example. I have to just be the example and
Yeah.
march right through. They'll pick up on it or they won't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. But we were hating our oppressors. We hate that, right? I want to kill Bill Gates, kill Bill, right? In
Mm.
another 2, 3 years, you're gonna be like, yo, man, I feel really sorry for that guy.
Sure.
Even no matter what happens to him, because he ain't doing nothing to us. I'm going to tell you right now. These
Mm,
characters are gone. They're done. They're done. Their time is up.
I
So
agree.
they had the power. They could press the button and turn you off, load you with nano, take your girl from you,
Hmm.
blow you up, stick you in a cage, control your car, drive it off a cliff. I mean, these guys are powerful people, right? There's reptilians. They eat you. They drink baby's blood and all this crazy stuff. You're gonna look at them and go, "Oh, there's baby dummies. They don't know any better." How could you know better if you can't see that? When I was talking to them about 5D, they were like, "That doesn't exist. We run everything from here down. That's it. That's all that exists." So either they're pretending they're not aware, but then let me show you how to do it because they swear to their AI god it's not there. And then bloop, I blast right past them. And they're like, where'd he go? And my physical body's standing right there, but they can't trace that other character in me. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? I'm like, the creator can see past all that where they can't. So if you're the king of 4D and down, oh, look, we found it. We found the head of fourth grade.
Yeah.
Congratulations, gentlemen. You're in fourth grade. We not only graduated college, we came back and started teaching as professors. So where are we? Oh, fourth grade. Here's your homework assignment for tonight. Make sure you're on time tomorrow. And people be like, "What? They've been eating babies." Listen, they don't know any better. Just like you don't. You're eating chicken burgers all the time. Where do you think
Right.
those chickens are? Processed and done all kinds of things. They're doing that to us. Yeah,
Sure.
and they have sharks with lasers and UFOs and inner Earth, all of that. It's all there. But the common sense and the logic to not do that to another creator being is not there because of the skin suit they're wearing. It's just yummy lunchtime, period. So they literally can't see past it. You can't. It's part of your system. We're using all these chakras. They're using like 3 or 4, and they're mastering 3 of them. And the
Yeah.
other ones they just loosely use or they're unaware that they can do that. Maybe they're seeing it in us because they help program us and don't think that they have that because they're already superior. So their superiority gets in the way. Their dominating species gets in the way of making them more intelligent. It kind of makes them ignorant on another level. Their common
Right.
sense goes right out the door, right? So it's weird how it works. So when
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
witnessing these characters, you start to go, oh, but they don't know. Like you, and you're not gonna be able to explain it to them.
Yeah.
That's like if you're being attacked by a giant spider that eats people, it's hard to tell that thing. You don't have to eat people. You could eat coconuts or something. Like it's just going to do what it has to do, right? You might have to kill it. You have to protect yourself. You might have to do, but you're going to look back and go, well, it doesn't know any better. It's an animal, right? Its whole
Right.
job is to just do that one thing,
Hmm.
Yeah.
right? The creator is the all, is the representation of the all, right? So as you
You,
witness these other things occurring, you start to feel bad. You become compassionate. You realize the level they're on. That was the point of that.
yeah. That was all really good. And just as like an anchor point to your perspective, Frank, just because this, who knows who watches this in the future and dynamic. And I think because of our dynamic, so if we're going to do this daily, I mean, I keep saying that, like, I guess it's happening. We're just doing it. We're just seeing how it unfolds. But the nice thing is, it's like you don't have to schedule people like people can just come on. Like we can come on nights in a row and just chat and like whatever, man. We got time to kill, and it's just going to be us. And if we've got a flowing conversation, that's cool. So we'll develop like what in a movie like good character development over time for each like persona, I guess. But anyway, just
Absolutely.
because it's like this is our first dynamic and first show, and the perspectives we're presenting can be really out there, right? And so I want to anchor even in our own three dynamic and our dynamic, my experience and my understanding of the things you're talking about before I even came to you. So all the things you're talking about, I found to be valid and true in my research and in my study. Vast diversity of like legitimate firsthand, really well done documentaries or different dynamics, and I mean on a vast degree of scales. Also, as I was talking about earlier before you came on the show, in this uh, past relationship, I started studying the psychology and some of the ministries and the ways they're helping people with SRA, DID. And so through that, you find out through their personal experiences, there's a lot of stories that overlap inside and outside of Christianity. Was seeing, the reptilians, the astral meetings that happen astrally in different places, people being taken out of their bodies on different levels into different. I mean, everything you're talking about, all the UFOs, secret space program, all the David Wilcock stuff. He presents tremendously good, documented, and it's stuff I've given my mom and like people that like I think that'll be really helpful for. It's not for everybody. There's really good stuff for people to see what's really going on behind the scenes, the pedophilia, the stuff with connections with Bill Gates. I mean, you can look this up. There's an article in like WikiLeaks where the woman who did all the artwork for the other pedophilic thing that was in the news recently, don't want to get flagged on anything, but like that was that she did the video for one of their production videos, and it got so many petitions or negative comments on there, they took the video down because she's the one who did the artwork, who also did the artwork where they laundered the money for all the pedophilic stuff, and it's all really there.
Right? There was Microsoft into the future with the head goggle thing. Who runs Microsoft? Bill Gates, right? Here we go again. Look at that crew, yummy crew. If you just put this stuff on your head, forget about the whole thing. That, Aaron, we were talking about this again earlier today. Like, I can't tell my mother to eat babies, right? I can't say that to her, but there's someone that can, where she'll go, oh, they're eating baby. Like, there's so many of us that pop off that maybe Zach needs to tell my mother, or she'll hear it from him and go, oh, okay. Where she hears it from me, it's not going to work.
Right.
My style might not work for these people or that person. So Aaron might be able to break it down through, well, there's a bunch of Christians and they're kind of fighting me on this stuff. Who are you going to pull into the conversation? I'm going to pull Aaron in. Aaron, it's going to be a lot more helpful if you're here instead of me screaming Space Jesus every 5 minutes. Then they go, that Aaron kid is so much smarter than Frank, right? So, okay, well,
Sure.
whatever you feel you need to do, say, be part of to make you get into that next level. Yeah. I don't want to fight with you. I need you up here. I need you unlocked, and I need you going. So we are providing now the personality aspects for all of them through our groups and these conversations. People will say, well,
totally.
Frank unlocked me. That was amazing. And then other people say, dude, you're nuts. You're just ridiculous. You see how calm Zach is? He seems to know a lot more than you, and you're a big dummy, right? Oh, okay, that's fine. We're all saying the same thing, right? Like, so it's in the Bible, right? It's in this version of religion. It's in that version of religion. All those versions of religion have been rewritten and touched on by man. So basically all roads lead to Oz with them as well. You remove the control system and you have exactly what we're doing now.
Okay, on all roads lead to Oz. So Zach, why don't you dive into, let's just give you the stage and the platform here. Dive into your take on your integration, because you said to me yesterday, whether it was on air or the 5 hours off air afterwards, at some point you said Jungian psychology, you like that's an overlay for you for everything, right? So
yeah, well, I mean, archetypical isolating things into archetypical identities is very valuable for understanding what's happening. I think at really any level, especially if you're trying to integrate it into psychology, because we already have this bridge built by somebody else, like a don't reinvent the fucking wheel kind of situation. So you can, I mean, standard human psychology, getting them unlocked out of themselves, just like the trauma that they're putting on themselves. We already have stuff for that, and I just think Jungian psychology is very good for that. It has proven good for me personally, but like, you can overlay these to really any situation that could possibly happen in the human experience. I don't think it actually limits. It's interesting that, like, end of Jung's life, he even goes into this archetype of the shaman, and this shaman archetype seems to be, it's weird how this ends up overlaying like the Jesus thing, right? Like, you got Jesus, 12 disciples, right? It's like 12 plus the kind of like one that didn't really get done. You got sound with like the Pythagorean step. Jungian archetypes, you got like the 12 archetypes he really well solidified. And then he's like working on this shamanism, which is like this go-between archetype that like that's where he kind of stopped at. And it did get refined more inside of Jungian psychology because of people like Merceliad and other people that came after, right? But that's like where Jung's life ended. And it's weird that you end up with this like 12 established disciples or harmonics, and then the 13th harmonic or disciple, the one Jesus, right? That's like, he's going between the whole thing, or in a Pythagorean step case, loops it back around. Like, it's weird that this thing ends up projecting itself back into that archetype system in Jung's life. I think that personally happens just because Jung lived like a very pure life to what he wanted to do. Like, he was all about that, and he did it for like his whole life. You know what I mean? And so we see like one full journey play out inside of his work, really. And like, you can start at shamanism again for the first thing. I mean, like, there's a certain point at least in all of my places, where it kind of like the beginning becomes the end, becomes the beginning, becomes the end. And if you perceive that thing wrong, then you feel very much like loop, cycled, these kinds of things. If you understand that that end is always, and you're focusing towards that, some kind of progression of yourself, a wider understanding, an integration of more storylines, an integration of more knowledge, whatever, then you're still doing that beginning becomes the end, but you're like spiraling instead of looping. You know what I mean? So we need,
That's
and
the
I
idea,
mean,
is to spiral up.
right, yeah. I mean, just keep getting bigger, like whatever the fuck that means at that moment right now. Like, oh, because you're becoming a gardener, cool. You're gonna get like great at it, sweet. Like, and that's just like the thing. That's your medium. You're passionate about it. You do that. That works. That's fine. So, archetypical kind of overlays are so that we can, I don't know. I like to like get things into less boxes, I guess, is kind of my whole thing. Like I'm like the oneness kind of idea or unity. I'm more like zero-ness, but it's about getting it into like less boxes, right?
Hmm.
So archetypes gives us one layer of like already having the boxes made. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So this is, I think it's just functional for your psychology.
I
Like
never, I never, I never thought about this as you triggered something and you said the 12
the 12+1
and
thing.
then the 13th being the one, right? So I say it like this. It's the piano, right? The 12 notes, 13 being
Yeah,
the new set of notes,
yeah.
right? So you're restarting. The 12 apostles, right? Or the 12 archetypes of the zodiac, the
Mm-hmm.
combination, the 12, and then the one guy sitting there, what they are all to become
Right.
if they conquer their own 12,
Yeah.
right? So then they sit at the table that way as that character.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an
It's just
interesting dynamic.
it's interesting.
Here's an interesting, just
Go
fast on
ahead.
that. They keep rolling. Well, so on the what you just said, all 12 of them around Jesus were showing the one they're to become, right? And the extra biblical text, like there's the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel, there's Gospels basically to all the disciples or by all the disciples, and in each one they have their own very nuanced, not just perspective on him, but almost every one he takes them aside and tells them things very specific to them. And then one of the times, I think I always told Thomas, he took him aside and they asked him what he told them. And he said, if I told you even one of the three things that he told me, you'd pick up stones right now and kill me. What do you think he was telling them? Oh, go tell him you're God too. No, 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 they'll kill me. They're having a hard enough time saying you're saying it, but like he would tell, but my point was he would instruct each one of them individually, their nuanced way or astrological sign but more than that,
Mm-hmm.
even at a soul level, being able to meet people in a way that you can use the boxes that are relevant to them. Finding, what'd you say yesterday? Symbol pattern or symbol, what was it?
Symbol set.
Symbol set. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Finding the symbol set. That's where we're talking, Frank. So yours, the way the symbol set came into your experience, not that you planned it, but the symbol set was a lot of the Egyptian gods and the Hindu gods and whatnot. And then, my symbol set was based on my cultural and upbringing. And, most of ours are in different dynamics. Would you say yours was different? What was your symbol set growing up, Zach? Or sets?
I mean, definitely like a lot of Egyptology angle of things for sure. The a lot of Hinduism as well. Really, like a lot of approach was through Buddhism and like martial arts approaches, like the kind of the sheer discipline, reiteration of the same things. Lots of these leading to mastery of self through just repeated action. And then so this crossover good into like yoga. But if we're talking about actually like symbol sets, probably the whole computing architecture and the internet and technology like that was the most functional symbol set for me, because
Yeah, elaborate, please.
well, like a lot of early psychedelic experiences were spent in spaces where, well, basically, I had explained to me how certain formats of either society, interaction, or our own mind was functioning like a piece of a computer that like I already understood, right? Like in my human life, I understood these parts of computing, so they presented a good symbolic carryover between the idea. I mean, the entire idea of collected consciousness can be understood as like the internet, right? Like the fact that we can be in three completely different places and then be face to face in the same device, like that's the thing, right? Like it's all is many places but one place at the same time, and the internet really brings that, and very much so like well, like our own brain functions very much so as like a processor, and the integration with the rest of the things that sit on the motherboard, right? Like the brain's really more the motherboard, and then your logical processing, the CPU, you got different places for different kinds of memory and everything like this. So for me, and understanding my own psychology, this was just because I already understood computers. I was raised in a house where, like, when I was 3 years old, I was formatting discs for my mom to get money to go and blow at Circle K on basketball cards and gum and shit. Like,
Yeah.
I was technology from the very beginning, like that, right?
Yeah.
So I was always around that. I understood computers, and then when I finally did, and this is because of psychedelics in my specific situation, high dose LSD by myself and really focused on computers, it just, my mind became psychedelic. That means to make the mind present, right? Like when I thought about computers, my mind became present through the computers. And since I understood the computers good, the mind made sense to me very easily. And I
Yeah.
could continually tap into this space by just purposely computers, right? Like I found that I could just do it by thinking about it. At first, I like specifically looked at the same computer, like my computer at home with the side open, and I believe very much in the ritual of like the same exact location and looking at the same thing with the same light and the same sound. Like it was all that, but it really didn't need to be all that in the long run. It needed to be like a lot of focus on computer, you know. And then I would get into the
Yeah.
space where something about, I do this with dreams now all the time. I go to sleep seeding something into my subconscious. It is basically just an abstract concept, sound, right? And then I go to sleep and I inevitably, functionally have dreams that explain to me how sound interfaces. And I just pretty much think this is how dreams work. We just don't pay any
Awesome.
attention to this. So we like
Yeah.
think about dumb shit before we go to bed. We're thinking about like the scary movie that we saw, or how much our boss
Yeah.
is an asshole, or like our childhood trauma is creeping up or something, right? So we have like dreams that are about dumb shit, or they're about bad shit, or they're symbolic metaphors of our trauma. Jungian analysis is all about analyzing dreams for sure, or even just
Yeah.
your life as a
Cool.
fucking dream, like one and the same. Just this is the awake dream and that's the asleep dream. Not a big
Yeah.
difference. Projections of the unconscious and the subconscious through conscious awareness is functionally all of experience through Jungian analysis. So dreams, very good, but like you can seed into your dream what you're going to experience. This is something anybody can practice, and we do it naturally. It comes from somewhere, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
That's wild, man. I never put that together till my older life, right? Like till I got older, the whole
sure,
computer and that. But then you get into the, well, am I programmed? Am I a robot? Right? It goes into
right,
that. Am I AI? Am I the NPC that's waking up? Like, what's going on here? It's no, you're
yeah,
programmable. You're in a program. You're in a holographic, organic program matrix where your DNA is like the program material. No, 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 it goes into all this stuff. And then you realize, as above, so below, right? They're
sure,
building you based on what they're talking about, the way they're saying, oh, this is how it should be. And then they allow us to free run inside of that machine. Yes, you can be programmed, but yes, you can be free as well. You could
sure,
have people that
Yeah.
act like robots, and then you could have people that, no matter what you think, will be done. Look, you can only go left, you can only go right. Eventually, someone's going to walk right up the wall, and you're going to go, I didn't even know you could do that.
yeah.
What's
I mean,
funny, what's funny is your computer, you've always resonated with that as your symbol set. So that to me is probably the most functional metaphor that works for the broadest spectrum of people
Yep.
in some way, shape, or form of that we're in a holographic
that's just
universe.
because more people picked up a fucking phone than picked up a Bible or picked up something else. Like they're all functional
Right.
carriers, but people are integrated a lot with technology and computers now. Like if I
Right.
said, when you say like, I don't know, you quote, what do you Ezekiel 9:17, like most people have no idea what that is, but if you say
Right.
like, well, at pornhub.com, we already know what you're talking about. You know what I
Yeah, no
mean?
Yeah,
doubt.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
And
yeah.
pornhub.com is no different than quoting like a Ezekiel 9:15 or whatever I said before, but like
Yeah.
we didn't pick that shit up, and
Yeah,
but
no
we
doubt.
did pick up things that function like a computer program. Whether you
Okay.
want to believe that there's literally something that's programming you, there's a matrix physical, there's a thing outside of it programming you, or you just want to understand the function of reality, like it works both ways. Like it can be understood through that carrier.
Well, you're in the flesh robot, and that's hard for people. You could tell people that, and they could
Yeah.
look at you, and they're so lost in just their own world that
It's
when you
funny
say
because it's
human
actually
flesh
so easy to
robot,
prove it to them too. Like just
I
the way
know,
you walk is such a procedural, logarithmic operation. You
right?
always do it the same way. You always walk down the stairs the same way. Even inside of
Yeah.
like Masonics and shit, they take up these practices of purposely like always walking off first with their right foot. Like it's like they add more procedure, and then they're but it's like, oh, but no, I'm not a robot. I'm just
You know, it's
procedurally
interesting.
generated. Like,
You know, it's
wait,
interesting.
what?
So it's interesting. So in the ancient traditions, right, in their own way, shape, or form, they simplify. So in the Kabbalistic tree of life, then the realms of hell numerically and the realms of heaven, that the farther down into hell you go, the more rules, literally laws, there are for each realm or
Sure.
instructions,
Well,
and
that's
the
what hell is, right? A
the
bunch of
more you go
fucking
up.
rules. I mean, I don't know about for you
Right.
guys, but when I was always told like eternal damnation, my mind immediately went like, so a place with like a lot of rules. Like that's basically what
Yeah.
it seemed
Yeah,
like
no
to me.
doubt.
You guys are
Yeah.
sending me to the ultimate stand up, sit down, kneel, stand up, sit down, kneel,
Yeah,
pray, pray, pray,
Right.
stand up, sit down, kneel, genuflect. It's like, yo, calm down with that stuff,
Dude, and see, and
right?
that's why the differentiator, the nuance in a nuanced way, why I made it so far within that paradigm, because the non-religious Christians, the relationship, were ones who understood it was about internalizing it, who understood it was the rituals were for a purpose of internalization. So it wasn't that's why there's 44,000 denominations though, bro. Sorry, like it sucks because that Christian experience, like who really knows? Because everybody's been through it so differently, and for certain depths of engagement. I engage that construct with my entire heart and soul, right? And
sure.
found incredible beauty and healing and all that stuff. But not everybody does.
Well, that's the idea of like the functional carrier, right? Like it has the ability to do it. People will tell you that like taking LSD will change your life. Man, I've taken LSD with so many people that were exactly the same dude for the rest of their life. They're still the same dude. Like still
Yeah,
now. They did LSD and a bunch of
right.
other things a whole bunch of times. They never changed. It was always just
So,
like them
okay,
partying
this
and
brings up,
fucking
hold on,
around,
this
like
is
and they're the same
perfect.
guy.
So this brings up LSD and fluidic space. We were talking about earlier, Frank. So I thought of this earlier. Oh, it's funny. Oh shoot, there you are. And you, Frank, and you, Zach. I'll have to figure it out. It's totally backwards. But so do you think? I just thought of this. I wonder if that melty experience on Lucy, the visual overlays. I wonder if that's some kind of tuning into a harmonic resonance with the actual fluidic space that we're really submerged in all the time. And maybe if that's the case, progressing that without necessarily being true or not, but progressing that one more, if maybe that is true, it would make sense to me why whenever I'm coming up on Lucy, I'm almost crying. I'm so happy. It feels so right. It feels more real than the solid reality. Right? It's at some
What
deep place inside of me.
what freaks me out is that when you and I were talking about having our own private space to work in on the theoretically, right? So when you
Yeah.
enter these spaces, let's say it's purple or violet, right? The violet color, and we're in there and we're discussing things. So it's a space, and then around this space, the walls are bubbling, moving, they're alive. It's like liquid color, just but it won't come in on our circle. It'll be all around us though, but it'll be moving and breathing, and you're like, well, what is that? What is it? It's like a rainbow in the water and everything, just waiting for you to pull it off the wall and do something with it. But that's the liquid just there, just floating around us, right? Those
Yeah.
it looks just like the
It's like it's
rainbows just
potential.
twisted in
I've
a
always basically
potential.
just
Thank you
simplified
so
it as
much.
potential. It's just
That's the
potential.
best way to say it, right? So you got this
Well,
blubberous.
realize like okay, so like when this is how I like thought about tracers in the first place. Was it like first time you ever took LSD, a couple hits, you played with the tracers with your hand, right? But I realized like with the tracer, like I could see the tracer in front of my hand too, and like I could see where it could be from where it is right now at many different snapshots in both directions. And I think that the melty thing that you're talking about as well is it's like, well, there's like a shape on the wall, right? And it could be right here, or it could be like out here, or in here, or it over here,
Right.
or
It could be
there's
back
all
this
kinds of
way,
places.
yeah,
You're
and it'll
snapshotting
just
it. It's actually all of those ways at the same time. And you're
Totally.
snapshotting it. It's like, oh, it's that way. No, it's that way. Oh, it's that way. No, it's that way. Oh,
Dude,
it's
you
that
know
way.
what that
No, it's that
reminds me
way.
of? That reminds me of Rogan. He was talking to one of the quantum physicists, but I think they brought up during the interview the most accurate picture of where what an atom actually looks like, because we
Mhm.
we picture it with them spinning around and whatever, all with distant spheres and whatever, but based on probability and based on like millions of photographs of different atoms or photons or whatever different dynamics, that there's actually a pattern for each different for where the actual electron will be, and I think it makes like the photonic shape, or there might be a couple different shapes. One of them at least is the Maltese cross, and the actual, which is the also an image of a photon, but that's where they will show up based on, I think, based on circumstances or dynamics. So it's interesting that the painting wouldn't just be anything. There's a level of coherence with the what you already knew was there, you believe to be there based on the rules of this reality and whatever. So there,
Yeah.
it's going to morph and shift a little bit, but it's almost like alluding to you. There's potential here. Now that you're aware, why don't you decide what it's going to be? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Why don't you
That's like
solidify
looking
it?
up at the cloud and then
And you
going,
did.
"Oh, it's a
Like
dragon."
that snapshot where it feels melty, right? Like it's here and then it's here
Yeah,
and then it's here and then it's like each one of those times you did decide what it was. That's not the true nature of reality. The
right.
true nature of reality is it is all the ways, all the time, all the potentials, and you snapshot it into specific observer affected moments that you believe exist. And then you put those into a continuity, you blur the space in between, and you believe you are in a linear timeline. You're not in a
Yeah,
linear timeline. You're in an immediate reality of all potentials simultaneously. Your whole life happened now. All life happened
yes,
now. But we see it in the procedural generation, basically, that we get through the snapshots at the rate of the dimensionality with which our consciousness is aligned. So
right.
you see
That was an
human time
excellent
at human
explanation.
time.
Yeah. And the reason that we still wake up in the same body every day is because we believe that we will in every moment at the subconscious and even unconscious, well, I don't know about the unconscious, at least subconscious levels. So to be able to do hypnagogic therapy, to be able to do your own audio journals or revocations or prayers and listen to them while you sleep, or things where you can do it in that hypnagogic state to rewire your beliefs to actually open up. Like I had to do, there's so many belief systems and glass ceilings I had to blast through coming out of the church, right? At a core heart level, not just the social dynamic and what my friends would think. And that's something I'm going to have conversations with for the rest of my life, hopefully, because I love them and would hope to maintain friendships. But having to go through those deep inner places of anxiety and thinking, my core mantra through that was, I only want what is true and what's real. Like I want what's true. And I assumed that means I could get rid of all the doctrine and all the other stuff around the core beliefs of who God is, Jesus. I thought that wouldn't change, probably, for sure, for the most part. But then I got exposed to enough information and just processing enough awareness and activation, whatever you want to call it, epigenetic expression, uh, coming into coherence inside of me. I was realizing I had to let go of that too. If I really want truth, that's where those anxiety moments. People think they just want truth until they're challenged with something they didn't expect to be challenged with, and then they actually don't
Sure.
want truth more than anything. They want that thing still,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
I
that's
want
being
the truth until it proves me wrong.
so, and that's for being an adult, not just manning up. Being an adult, really, not being a child, and taking responsibility for our own. Like for me, like if I say something like that and I find something that scares me or whatever, I'm like, oh shit, I was wrong. But that's cool. I'm glad I found something that
Yeah.
I was totally wrong about. That doesn't, like that doesn't happen very often. That dynamic.
I
But
was
like,
actually on a podcast earlier today with a friend of mine that's like a life coach and public speaker and stuff. And he ends up asking me like how do you get over the fear of being wrong? And I was like, well, I mean, like honestly, I don't have anything to fear about that. Like I know I'm wrong. Like I don't have all the
right,
data. I'm definitely wrong. Like if I
right.
think something right now, it couldn't possibly be right. It's not all the data. Like there's no way I'm right.
But
So
then
I
isn't
know
it
I'm wrong.
amazing when it
What's there
is?
to fear?
It's amazing when it is.
Yeah,
Like the
I
more I
don't need
feel
to
like,
run into that fear. I just let it all
yeah,
go. Just talk from your
like
truth and
Yeah.
so it's
and
interesting.
understand
Like
that you're a constant student.
yeah, both simultaneously. It's not hard. I just don't know why that's a hard concept. So I'm glad that I'm with like-minded people and I'm just finding more and more of them where it's not a competition mindset. There's more than enough abundance to go around in form of celebrity or money or who cares. Like it's nice that we can be doing a chat where we're just having a good time, not having to,
Yeah, I
let
mean,
it
Frank's talking
organically
about the
be.
space with the walls with the potential. Like, you ever been in
Yeah.
that space? Ooh, you ain't worried about if there's enough energy to go around. Trust me, there's plenty.
Really?
You're good. You're definitely like, oh yeah, this can power this machine. I don't know what the machine does, but this can power it. Like, this
Right.
is enough. This is definitely enough.
It is
That's
an interesting. Well, it's maybe somewhat off topic. This is what came to mind. So, like, the emotional and the logical dynamic, or at least because you said on the potential in melty space. So there's a logical side of me as I entered into that dynamic where I understood, I had understanding, Bina, and that side of my brain. But but there wasn't um there's a side of it that was emotionless in a sense. It was guided by values of assessing this new data and fitting that into old frameworks and paradigms to process and expanding or breaking off part of my paradigm to expand it or change it around as necessary. But then there was the heart level, like total joy and satiation and feeling of, and I wonder if maybe that's my ego, like little Aaron, right? So there's a seated part of my soul that's present during that dynamic. It's not that it's like emotionless, like sterile. It's just solid. Like it's done this long time. It's me from the future or some shit. I don't know. It's fully present. It's cool. It's been here a million times before, even though this has never happened before in this life. Then there's a little part of me, I feel like, that's like so grateful I get to go along for the ride, because like I can't astral project. I'm not lucid dreaming yet. So I'm like, I feel like I'm disconnected from, but I have an awesome imagination, right? I got that shit down. So, but it's the part of me can feel like disconnected from those experiences to actually have more and more visceral experiences, and even sober and just meditations and things. So this is just one example, but it just feels so awesome. Feels like everything I could ever want. And it's all about me having experience inside of me. It's not about another person. It's not about getting anything. Well, in this case, it's getting Lucy, but like other than that, it's not even then though. It's not to go party. Like it's literally so that I can be on Lucy and have my own experience and go into the realms I want to go into my psyche, setting matter, et cetera, sure. But it's not really about anybody else at this point, unless I'm choosing to do that for intentional reasons. It's like, I found these avenues, these boxes, psychological boxes or symbol sets, but they're also physiological things that really are working right now to help me integrate and grow and settle and achieve greater states of being whole and present in this life. So yay
That's
me.
my whole jam right there. I don't care what your story is. If it works for you, let's do it.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good one. Let's learn about it. If I don't already heard it, let's learn about it.
That's a ride. You could just convince me to get on.
Yeah.
I'd have been like, no, yeah, we could do this.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Wow.
There's so many layers and different things that you could always uncover and push, go on, reverse, recheck, look at it, move on. You just spiral up, spiral down, go left and right, laterally. You just so much of infinite, and that little bit of separation allows you to be like, oh, look what I uncovered. Oh, look what I uncovered, and enjoy the ride. However, it's wonderful that you could be like that. Remember, a lot of the people aren't like that. They're like trapped.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the feeling of being trapped in it. So we have to find a way to be like, nah, it's not a trap. No, you're not a simulation. Right. Yes, you're organic. You're real. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you got to kind of come through this, even though it sounds weird and it's like a dream that you're waking up from.
Yeah.
Because I didn't come here to live 9 to 5, to work 9 to 5, pay taxes and die. That just doesn't resonate with me on any level. That I would come into this space to do shit like that.
I had that same thing. Like, there's no way I came here without doing all this for that. Like, that, you got to be kidding me. Like, there's no way.
No way.
There's like cliffs to jump off of, and you could be like a wingsuit pilot, and you could drive race cars. And like, I came here to go to work every day and get a paycheck, and then like be at a house with just like the same. No, I don't think there's no way that's possible.
It would have been easier to convince me that I just here to pet cats than do something to pay taxes and die.
It totally would have. But they would, who can make any money off of you petting cats? You know what I mean?
You'd be surprised on the internet, right?
Yeah, maybe today. That's why the internet broke their paradigm, is because now they're like, oh wait, people can make more money by just like petting cats and posting stupid videos and
just
reacting about other stuff. Like,
yeah.
That's great.
Mm.
You guys are wonderful. I want to say thank you again. And by the way, congratulations for getting this whole thing going.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thanks,
man.
man.
It's
Yeah.
wonderful. It's beautiful, and there's something for everyone, right? You got three
Yeah.
guys sitting around talking, three different personalities. Think of what that hits out there and how it'll just continuously go on. And then the connections where we could step in and go back and go, remember when it was like this, when we said it was like this, or we did it like this, and then, well, this happened and now it's like this. And then boom, it just opens into a whole nother realm again.
Yeah.
And it allows people to jump in with us and just sit with us and go, okay, so he's not Jesus. He's not Space Jesus. Frank's not really Frank Castle, the Punisher, running around trying to get into the ultimate realms and all. We're just doing our work. We're regular guys,
Yeah.
and we're breaking through. And
Yeah.
you guys, everyone can come along and join this journey. The conversations need to be had. You need to look at the truth and stop dressing it up. And then you need to dress it up and look at it and go, that's what it looks like dressed again. And then take the
You
dressing
need to
off
look
of
at the
it
truth and
and go,
not dress
oh,
it up,
okay.
and then you need to dress it up and look at it again.
Dude, well done. I like that.
That's very quotable.
No doubt.
So I love you guys for this. I'm going to have to break out.
Yeah.
It's,
I love you
it's
too.
like 20 after 1 in the morning. But thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to enjoying many episodes of watching
Yeah.
you and listening to you and interacting with you on that level, and a whole bunch with me there too.
That's
Yeah.
right.
We appreciate it, man. Thanks
Love
for
you,
coming on
Frank.
tonight.
Absolutely.
Thanks
All
so
right.
much,
Take care.
guys. I love your faces. Have a great night.
Have a good one.
Peace.
Ooh, change overlay. Dude, that
I
was
actually
awesome.
do need to run AFK for a second. So if we could bring this down, or I could just run AFK for a second. It's really your choice, but I am going to be about like at least like 5 minutes or so.
What's AFK?
So away from my keyboard.
Oh, thanks. I didn't know that one. That's fine. I'll just monologue, I guess.
Cool.
All
I'll be
right.
back.
Cool. Oh, there you go. Zach's icon's on screen. Okay, well, actually, here, why don't we go to the chat since we got a minute to reflect? Oh, okay, look, we'll go back up. Wow, I actually understood what you're discussing. Awesome. That was fun. That's cool because I've had Zach and I've had, so last night we talked for 5 hours after the show, and then we've talked a couple times in the last few weeks, and they've just been really awesome conversations that have gone on and on. And then Frank and I have conversations like that too. And I met Frank, as I alluded to, I think a couple years ago now. I heard his stuff on YouTube, and I just knew that I was going to be. Actually, I guess we can even go full screen there. And I just knew that I was going to someday that I was going to meet Frank. I just knew, right? How do I know? It's not like, oh, I'm going to meet Frank. I just knew in like my soul. I've had that with like many people in my life, and it just happens at some point in life. Could be years away. It's just like, oh, I know I'm going to meet that person. Awesome. I can feel into what that feels like to meet them, and like, so in a sense, like and he's, and he had his own show. Oh, also to refer Frank, we'll have to link this stuff. Remember to link these things, Aaron. In the bottom, but Frank's got his own YouTube channel, Frank Castle. I think you can just find it that way. He's also on TFR, some of his older episodes, first 100 or so or whatever. And then I was going to say that and he was on an interview just a couple nights ago, within the last 3 or 4 or 5 days, for last week for sure. And it's a 3-hour interview on Paranormal Radio, or there's another name for it. I'll try to link him. Really, really good. That's Frank's whole story from his life story kind of, but also where he started taking ayahuasca 5 or 6 years ago or so now, and all the experiences he had in detail. And he just continues to articulate. So even if the things he found about Frank were interesting, for example, what made me think of that is when Frank said that his conversation with Lucifer, when he met Lucifer during an ayahuasca experience, or that was his first DMT experience actually. So he goes into more elaborate detail on that interview. So yeah, so that was cool. Well, hi, Kala Sislo. How are you? What state are you in right now? She's out there road tripping. Road tripping. Let's see. Okay, so someone said 3 wise men. Willow. Hey, Willow. Let's see. Thank you. That's cool. What a cool thing to say. I would agree. I think we're pretty funny guys. We seem to entertain each other pretty well. Yeah. Let's see. Glad you caught live. Bummed to miss the beginning. Oh yeah, glad you could make it. 105. Awesome. Really, it's so cool. It's nice to be able to interact with people. Can't wait to see the replay. I missed. Listen to first episode today. We'll do Neil Goes Wonderful. Oh, that's nice. Thanks, Willow. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's just in response to what we were saying. Joe M said rad. Awesome. Thanks. So, where did I leave off? Trying to think if I even have anything to drink besides faucet water right now, and I don't want faucet water. Hold on, I'm gonna go get something to drink. I'll be right back too. I just realized I didn't turn my mic off, so there's still audio as I'm getting stuff out of the fridge. Anyway, I found something to drink. Okay, so what are the dynamics? Okay, so you are the placebo dynamic. So that's from Joe Dispenza, or at least where it's popularized from. I think you might have coined the term too, but it's my favorite, and I like it a lot because I don't know. For me, the whole placebo dynamic, it just cinches it for me. It's all about you. You know, if you can take a sugar pill and get healed, well, there's contributing factors. No, placebo happens yes, there's infinitely nuanced reasons, but there are some core frameworks we can dissect just in psychology, I feel like. So I don't think it's that much of a stretch to prove we create our reality. It doesn't have to be new age. It just makes sense, you know? So if you are the placebo, then anything that you use in life is a placebo belief catalyst or detriment, I guess, but whatever you're trying to build or construct in your life. So, excuse me. So being able to, what's a good example? I don't know. It's really anything, right? Anything that you use, like the ritual things you do before you go to sleep, or whatever that is for you. Washing your, washing your face, taking a shower, or whatever your habits are. But even in your own mind and like the way you prepare your mind, or shows you watch, or whatever, they're rituals or habits. But using placebo belief catalyst, if you want to change your habits or do something new, or you want to engage, sleeping and having more sovereignty over your dream time, in your dream space. So doing things like I have 4 stuffed animals around the 4 corners of my bed, and I put my own intentions into them. They're different metaphorical, archetypal representations of things, but you can do it with really anything. It's what matters to you that you're putting intention and creating a sacred, if you will, and sovereign environment, so that when you sleep, you're connecting to you, not being tied into any other energetic grids or sacred geometry grids and Masonic grids and all the other stuff that's around, the other dynamics, but being able to have it cleanse your space, having some kind of essential oil or, essential oil, but I'm thinking of the machine, the distiller or something. It's not distiller, but it's not a vaporizer. I don't know, something like that. And so, some kind of scent like Palo Santo is wonderful. And I got a bunch of resins. Okay, this is turning into like a blog. All right, a blog. Like, hey, you want to go see this? All right, well, it is what it is. Zach's gone, so I'm just gonna pat her on. All right, check this out. So there's a whole bunch of different resins I got for an incense burner. All right, this one I got here. Which, hey, here's a little tidbit, I guess. If you've never burned resins or incense, here's how you do it. And I don't know. It's still hot. I don't think it's. I had this burn at the beginning of the show. It's been 2 hours. Yeah, it's probably done. Okay, so the way I do it, there's like ways to do it. But let's take the charcoal. I'm gonna get a pack of charcoal briquettes. Come in a box and get them on Amazon. Most of the stuff you can get on Amazon. And then I don't have a jet. Oh, I do have a jet lighter. I'm gonna run and grab it. I'm putting in here on top of the ash. This is the old one. Oh, wait, is it gone? That'd be awesome if it is. Sorry, I'm trying to look to see if you have to see if it's starting to spark and actually go. Oh, it did. Cool. It had enough of the old coal burning that it got this one going, which is great because I was gonna have to get it's a pain in the butt with a regular lighter to try to hold it up and do it. So that's going. I gotta let that get completely. I usually wait till it gets completely white-ish or cools down or it's gone through thoroughly because the resins will burn really quickly and sear. But oh, the one I've got right here, so I'll probably just put on here, is rare black frankincense. I thought that was fitting for talking about the Bible stuff because they gave Jesus frankincense, gold, and myrrh, which is very interesting because it was very interdimensional items. You know, myrrh and the fragrances, so smudge and everything, clearing out different astral realms and dynamics from entities or different things. But smudging in different forms, different scents do different things with different purposes and intentions, or continued morphogenic field expression through belief systems over time, something like that. So it's cool to try. If I had a point in that at all, it's cool to try different resins and different scents because it does like it's interesting how they'll not just like if I like the smell or don't like the smell, like trying to go much more nuanced and deeper than that and trying to figure out what, all the nuances of what the smells like bringing up in remembrance, even in my DNA. And then obviously some I do actually enjoy more than others, but trying to, being able to know them all, like a lot of psychedelics and different things, like there's a pretty broad spectrum that I'm covering and have covered because I see the value in the additional nuanced perspective and even smells bringing that perspective, which is really interesting. Because your nose is the only thing or not the only thing. Well, actually, I think the only thing, but we'll just say it, the open orifice area of your nose, the way it goes up through your turbulators. I think they're called turbulators. I always forget, but I'm like, really, turbulators in your nose? But I'm pretty sure it is. You have 3 different ones, 3 different chambers. Anyway, but it goes right up to through your cerebral spinal fluid. I think right up into your brain, right? And so in the sense, I guess, I don't know if they proved this or whatnot, but they can stimulate memories more than any other sense. It's from the scent. Yeah. And then thinking like movies and stuff, right? When they use that, the sniffing salts to wake somebody up or whatever, like the scent knocks them conscious. It's interesting. All right. Let me put some of this in here. Okay. So then now it's in there, try to break it up into, it's almost off screen, but that's okay. So they come in typically different briquette sizes. And then this one's actually been fortunately pretty easy to crumble. Some of them are not, and that's annoying, or they're kind of almost can be gooey because the resins just melt at a lower temperature. I think this one's starting to be gooey. Yep, it's going to be a big one. And it smells. Tell you a second, this one's lesson's not breaking up very easy. All right, there we go. So it smells like frankincense, like that's a base note in it or something. I don't know, man. It's like a tree, but a tree I've never. I mean, I want to say it's just black. Yeah, black frankincense is like the right descriptor, but it doesn't. That's not a significant enough word for me, or sufficient enough word, because like a root. I don't know, man. It's interesting. It's really interesting. I don't know. Whatever. So it's just a silly little nuance. Um. Okay. What was I gonna say? Oh, let me go back through the comments here because that's about all I had to say on that. Kala said, it's so interesting the way each energy was described by each of you. Then the liquid, especially since I experienced those without any type of assistance. Yeah, you are awesome. And I know there's a lot of you out there. That's really cool. So it's cool also, I imagine, to hear it from additional perspectives through different upbringings and different experiences. Because I don't know Zach well enough to know the dynamic with him, but I know Frank experienced that without help also most of the time, and that just helped amplify certain things for him and help him to explain, I think, a lot of his own upbringing and experience. Just hadn't really had a framework for it, and a lot of other people. So that's really cool. So yeah, I'm glad that you heard. That'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on those perspectives. In Colorado, working with energies, yes, cool. Here we go. Cool. Let me do a topic change. MK Ultra channel. Okay. Question about the Bible. What does Elohim stand for? Okay, so based on my study of the original text and everything, if you go just grammatically, if it ends in HIM, or that's transliteration, but im, I think it's a vav, wasn't it? Yod. Yeah, it's a yod mem, im. It's a plural. Right, so in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's actually Bereshit bara et Elohim hashamayim haaretz, I believe. So it's in the beginning, or in the beginnings, Elohim, God's, created the heavens and the earth. That's my opinion that's the right way to interpret that. But it doesn't matter to me ultimately, because whatever framework works for you. So I don't need to go. The Mormons do that. It's funny because I learned that when Mormons came to the door years ago. And before I also learned it just through studying the text. But the Mormons, that was one of the arguments. They were like, they kind of walked through that, but it was like at the time, I literally just didn't believe it. And what I did was, this sparks an interesting story. So it caused cognitive dissonance in me, right? That when they showed that through the text, and then they're showing how there are errors in the Bible, or I think that's what their point was. Not so much that, or that we are all gods. That was to prove their belief for their afterlife system. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't know what to do with that, but I thought that Elohim is male plurals. Yeah, it's plural for sure. Well, there's B'nai Elohim, which means the sons of God, which are the angels, but they're typically what's the word? I was to say amoral, not amoral. Usually they're assigned to do tasks, or they do have free choice. Asexual a lot of times, unless they come in some shape or form. So that's interesting too. But yeah, so when I had dissonance with what that word meant back then, I just held on to the dissonance. I trusted in my paradigm that God was a good father and that he was trustworthy, the God of the Bible, as I believed and understood him. So this dissonance, where apparently God, the word God means gods, I didn't know what to do with that, right? It seemed like what their logic was somewhat sound, but maybe there's just something I didn't understand. And just kept going on with life and my relationship and that dynamic with the Lord, with that dynamic. And eventually within the church, what it seemed to me, in a way that it made sense within that framework, was what that could mean is, in the beginning were the three parts of God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, because it says in the beginnings for John 1:1, and this is more of a famous verse outside the church too, but in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God. He was with God in the beginning, and before him nothing was made that has been made. In him all things were made that have been made. So the word, the logos, the spoken word, and me and Zach actually were talking about this a lot different times, but the sound sound and light almost being a constant interchange or amplification of being the original frequencies of existence. And so if Jesus was in the beginning of the Word, and you get into the other verses, in the beginning, the next few verses, it goes into that the Spirit hovered over the face of the earth. And so it shows at the beginning of creation, even the Spirit's there. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It could be read as, this is the problem with interpretation, right? It's literally endless. You can interpret based on different value systems. That's why there's 44,000 denominations. I'm sorry. How can you just say your way to interpret it is the right way? And that's fine. That's why they stick to just believing in well, you just believe in Christ and Christ in you. Well, I do. Well, no, not like you do. Like we do. Okay. So we'll just agree to disagree. Okay. Shoot, I got myself off track. Let's see. You can compare Genesis 1:1 versus Exodus 23. Can you can you post that real quick? What's Exodus 23? Just so I know offhand. Actually, let me see. Oh yeah, I've got my phone. I can do two things at once. Unless it forces me to install an update. No. Postpone. Exodus 23. Oh, you shall have no other gods before me. Okay, so that's I'm assuming there that the Hebrew is Elohim is what you're pointing out. Yeah, so even if you interpret so a lot of the Christian paradigms, I think it's called hermeneutics, if I remember correctly, the way to interpret scripture. So there's different denominations have different excuse me, structures and for doing that. And a lot of them is you interpret scripture with scripture. So you cross-reference any other time that Hebrew word or Greek word has been used throughout the entire 666 book. I believe it to be a divine book. And honestly, look, the Bible code, if you've never seen documentaries on it, it's pretty legit. I believe the Bible to be a very interdimensional document. You know, that there's a lot of code and things that were done well with the Bible and the other ancient texts too. There's actual skip codes and things, and the Hebrews get into that whole dynamic in Israel and I mean modern day stuff they've been doing for a while. But um, when you interpret it within the context of just the scriptures, you find that Elohim is only used one time in a way that is singular. And I believe it's talking about God or Yahweh or whatever. Because a lot of it too. So when they talk about God or Yahweh specifically in the Bible, it's Yahweh Elohim or Elohim. Yahweh Elohim often. You know, or Yahweh Yahweh Rapha, Yahweh Rapha, or the different titles of God. But the God's name or God's name, or El, a lot of times El Abraham or Abraham, denoting a lord or a king, but it's El Elohim, God's El, Israel, Isis, Ra, Elohim. You know, it's all in the words, man. Really, code is all in language. You know, so there he is. Welcome back. How's your AFK?
Took a little longer than expected. It was everything I ever hoped it would be, man.
Yeah.
I had high hopes and it lived up to it. Yep. So, anyways.
Okay. I have a thought. So I'm down. I'm on a roll to keep just chatting. We're over 2 hours. That's fine. But do we want to do like a end a normal show so we keep the normal podcast 2 hours and then we can do like we can just when we feel like it, like if we do tonight, we literally jump right back on with just our own kind of after hours more chatting, or should we just let it roll and let it?
I mean, because I never took the time to find out if there's anything to do with over 2 hour videos, but we're already over it anyway, so we could just let this one just roll and see what happens to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll try things.
It might actually, I mean, you know, backstage talk right here, but it might actually help our watch time because it's altogether possible that someone turns it on and then goes AFK, and if it's a much longer video, then they get more watch time, even if they're not watching. So
I
might help us in the long run.
I know, it's funny because
also, you know, low key, if you just want to like turn on the video on other devices and watch it, that helps us. So, anyways.
Yeah. It's funny because Frank what was I gonna say? Shit, nope, I totally lost it. So
Frank
topic.
would be the only way I could help you out, so that's not a lot to
No,
go
you
off
can't.
of.
So I'm gonna totally restructure that. Oh wait. Last question, do you sun gaze? Oh yeah, I've been doing some questions on here. Oh wait, there's another one before that, but okay, hold on.
Where
We'll
did
start with that. There's
Christianity attain the date to celebrate 25th of December as Christmas? And I actually kind of have a kind of complimentary question to that. I don't actually never looked into it. I have heard that what would be the actual date of Jesus would be closer to
September 11th.
Easter or something.
Oh.
The opposite direction of the way that we recognize
Yeah.
it. I don't remember which direction that is. My bad.
So I've heard a lot. A lot of it, if you want to really simplify it down, astrotheology will really explain most of it. The movements of the stars, 12 disciples, all the metaphors, all the archetypes, all the stories in the Bible. Like it does a really good job. But there are additional dynamics. There's the actual changing of tradition over time, the celebration of he was the king of Babylon, or who was whatever, Nimrod on August 25th. It's been a cult ritual date for a long time, so they've changed Christianity, the Catholic Church. Jeez, man, I hope people know there's more than just one pope. For one, but like that whole dynamic, man. And so
So you say more than one pope? Like, how many popes are there? Like, I mean, as far as I know, there's only one. There's one that we observe. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Have you personally done any research into that at all? Like, do you know the additional esoteric structures that are very, very from the insiders, all the different interviews, like the real people who know and have come out of that system and know what's going on, and the trauma victims who like talk about these are the different structures, like none of that stuff?
Nope.
Interesting. That's why it's cool doing this with you too. Like, there's a lot of backstory and like base knowledge I don't know that you do or don't have. So obviously that allows us to have different stories and dynamics come out. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So, okay. So
what do you mean by that though? One pope. Like, what do you mean that there's more than one pope?
Yeah. So my understanding is there's a white pope and there's a black pope. The white pope ultimately is the face. Right, he's not the real decider. Obviously, he has power, just like our president has power in some forms. Even though, okay, are you familiar with the deep state infrastructure, the whole Trump dynamic and
sure, yeah,
the Q material basically, or David Wilcox material, that logical framework and that news media. Okay, all right, that'll help connect the two. So it's just, so it's similar to that, but there's all these people running the Pope behind the have for 2,000 years. I mean, it's been part of their infrastructure, the Knights Templar, the different and. Well, there's a lot of different dynamics in there, and there's a lot of history. There's just so much history. So you can start to get the frameworks, and you see the archetypes and the cycles they repeat, and the ways they do infrastructure and power, right? Mm-hmm. And so it makes sense when you find out from modern day traumatized victims, all their stories, and different popes and different structures, and they all overlap and say similar things. That they would have these hidden back structures there, but that they do. And the Pope and the Jesuits, ultimately the Black Jesuit. There's a really good interview with shoot, what's his name? He's a really cool dude. He's actually a hypnotherapist, and I didn't know that. It just came out randomly in one of his shows. But he does this radio show, and he's with two other guys. They were basically a guy who does the YouTube channel Plain Truth, APLANE Truth, based on the flat truth dynamic. But if anyone's going to look into that, his is one of the best sites to go through. He does it really well. That leads you at least into a way of thinking about things and examining evidences that make you go, huh. Maybe it's not as black and white an issue as I thought, and then that can freak people out, right? Whatever you believe about it. But anyway, him and another guy did a really good interview on the Jesuits and that whole structure, and broke down the whole 13 bloodlines, but way beyond that, all the other stuff that's gone on, the way that they created the Bible and the way that they structured the stories based on these families. Like, to me, all that stuff I've traveled, it all seems true. Like a lot of that, like everything seems true simultaneously, and it's worked out to the mess we have today. You know. But a beautiful mess in a sense.
So basically, the idea is that there's that really, like, the Pope that people recognize is really more like a figurehead, and there's probably somebody who's really more like leading behind the scenes. Is that kind of the concept?
Yeah. Hold on, I want to keep going. Let's make this lighthearted. Okay, this guy's name's MK Ultra for once, and he's asking me questions he agrees. I appreciate it. I do. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just like, okay, dude. Like, I'm getting grilled, and like, Christmas equals winter and summer solstice. Agree? I don't know. Shit, if I don't, am I in trouble? All right, but like that, and I only get to sun gazing. I do agree. That's another part of it. So in a more ancient tradition, actually doing it on the summers and the solstice, the resurrection after 3 days at perfect stillness. It also goes to connects to your bowels and to the whole chakra cycle and ascending through Jacob's ladder. I mean, all the things parallel, but they all root back to the movement of the sun and the stars. That's why astrotheology really is the root behind. You can see the archetypes and all the religions and stuff and all the frameworks, back to the stars and all the way back, at least to the last 6,000 year iteration. They've been doing astrology since, I think they got 5,000-year-old tablets and things doing astrology accurately. So
Yeah, I don't know. I
yeah,
mean, the winter summer solstice thing makes a lot more sense to me than like some just fucking day. You know what I mean?
right.
Like, what's December 25th? I mean, really, like, there's no real thing besides just like this story that
Well, so
makes it notable.
and I think we maybe talked about or Vera talked about this. You're familiar with Rupert Sheldrake's work, Morphogenic Fields, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you build up a morphogenic field around a date, you create a portal, or you create an application of a resonance that comes around when the sun and moon or whatever times in the date you may have chosen, and you do blood
Sure, but
rituals and all the
like, I
stuff they
mean,
do for centuries.
what's
But
the
as
sense
a
behind
base
this though?
level,
Besides just like literally, so I can pick any arbitrary day and
yeah,
build enough of a structure around it, and that's then like that.
it
That's
brings
now a
reality.
thing. That's the
It brings
idea.
realities. Oh, okay. Thank you. This is really sweet. Appreciate for sharing. I resonate with your ideas and knowledge. Thanks, brother of light. Yeah, man, you too. Um, so, sorry, go ahead and give me where we left off.
Oh no, it just like, I mean, it seems if we can pick any arbitrary date for something, then how powerful is that really? You know, especially when you touch on
Yeah,
the idea of like, well, astrology, astrotheology, these kinds of things. Like, there's, well, the Gayat al-Hakim, or otherwise known as the Picatrix, is a Middle Eastern text from a long time ago. Don't need to pick into what it is, but functionally as a spell book. But the entire thing is about talismanic magic, basically, and it's all very aligned to dates. But those dates that it says for things very much so have an alignment and a reasoning why like stuff is in the right place. And
yes.
December 25th specifically, as far as like astrology goes, there's nothing in any particularly special place on
Well,
December 25th
okay, so one,
or anything like that.
there
Really.
probably is just maybe ways that I'm not, not aware of certain nuances of astrology. Astrology is very nuanced, right? I've learned that
Sure, I
for
mean, unless
sure.
you're doing some crazy shit like mapping some like weird asteroid, like I talked
Yeah,
about
yeah,
formatting the discs
sure.
for my mom earlier. The reason I was formatting discs is because we were putting astrology charts on them. Like, it's been in my life, like my whole life. I mean,
Okay, right
even when
on.
I run my own astrology like a lot, but even when I do that, like, I'm plotting like, I don't know, 25 stars, 20 different asteroids, all of the normal planets, galactic center, pointing to various different galaxies. And even then, December 25th, it's a fucking arbitrary day. It's just like some day.
Okay, so let me pick. I didn't know you had that knowledge base. Great. So I'll bounce off of you. I was broad sweeping with my own knowledge base, which is not nearly as extensive as yours. And as a side
I
note,
guess it is
well,
interesting that that's 1225. And like,
okay,
if we do the
continue.
Pythagorean reduction thing, we have it in a 10 there. And there's ways where
Yeah,
we can draw a correlation that 10 comes from the Hebrew letter Yod. And Yod is a place where we got the idea of God from. And I think that's also interesting with the carryover to the idea of like cycles happening in nines and God always being the idea of the thing beyond. Then again, you see where like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like we could really understand it, 0 through 9. And then I have the first iteration of 0 again. So I call it 10. Right, but it's like the thing outside of the system I
right.
was just in. So you get a lot of carryovers where like 10 would be God, and I mean, I guess 1225 does reduce to 10. So like maybe that seems like I'm fucking just. It seems like I
No,
just flew across the galaxy to make a correlation as to why
okay,
that day
but
was worthwhile.
here's why I feel that correlation is valuable. One, I value gematria and number direction very much in my own personal life, right? I've just the numbers have once I found out the numbers had meaning, I started seeing numbers and then they had meanings. But the meanings I associated was through which I'll have more visible at some point, was through the original. I have it up my wall. The original Hebrew alphabet, and it's the pictograph symbology, like we were talking about the other night, the meaning of heart. Remember? So the
Do
number
you know,
Yod.
like, even towards like the 18, like probably, I can guarantee at least until the mid 1700s, it was
Yeah.
considered a high art in universities, like equivalent to fucking any science, to of how to basically, eh, through like literature, writing words, how to hide information in there. That was just like a
Totally.
thing that they taught in college, like, like this
Totally.
cryptology and relating
Right.
it to number and things like this. Like, it's fucking
Right.
fascinating going through
Yeah.
basically the
Etymology and all
works,
that shit.
not even just like etymology, it's so far beyond that. Like, these guys are so clever.
Okay,
Like, the
but the use
Renaissance
of
period,
yeah, yeah,
and like early 1700 Elizabethan era, basically, and then like
yep.
King James as well. Like, that period of time, they were doing like the craziest shit with writing. I mean, I think it's actually all over the place, but they were doing the craziest shit with writing there. And it's crazy, like the carryover to gematria. Like, we were already doing this when we
Yep.
were writing like the Bible and stuff with these,
Yep.
I guess, what would you call them, geometric comparisons or whatever. I don't really know how
Sure.
you say that
Yeah,
word
do
in
it.
that
I
format.
got you.
But nevertheless, like, when you use gematria to draw a correlation between two words, in many ways you end up creating some type of like diverse cipher for what you've actually just written there and what you haven't written there.
Totally. Dude, so in the original Hebrew tradition, so there's the Kabbalah, which is more the actually taught of, I think, of the actual Kabbalistic structure and those dynamics. But you have the oral traditions that are passed on. I think it's the Mishnah and a few others, and a lot of it they're collections. This guy who was a professor at Harvard back in the early 1900s wrote. He's a Jewish professor, and he wrote the Legends of the Jews. He collected all the oral stories and he wrote them down in 6 novels. And I've got them. I ended up printing them all out. I couldn't find. I found one set on eBay. There
Seems
wasn't
like you
even the
should have
complete.
spent some time to come up with like a better name.
The Legends of the Jews.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like, I mean,
Well,
it
so
seems like just such
okay,
a cop out, like, Legends of the
break it
Jews.
down. Break it down to me. Why does that seem like a cop out title? What do those nuances of those words mean to you?
It's not even it's that there. I mean, there's just not a lot of nuance to those words. I mean, like, you can spend all
How
day
so?
like picking apart
What is
what does
legend? What is
legend really
legend?
do.
Does a legend to you mean myth, or does it mean past functional archetype,
No,
or actual historical story?
I mean, I think it can definitely be used in all of those ways. So
Right?
what does a person really mean when they say it?
Yeah,
But it's
sure,
really just like, I don't know. It just sounds so normal. That's really the thing. It's
sure.
not like a big thought out thing. When I hear that, and I know it's like you've collected all this data and da 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 da, and then you put it together, and like, it's the Legend of the Jews. I feel like they could have done
So
more.
okay, look. So Call has read it. It's super good, right? So it's
Okay.
written down. The written
Well,
down
I mean,
oral
maybe the
stories.
book's great, but if it's great, then that even further reinforces my point that you should have put some time into the title, right? Like,
Yeah, well, okay, so to me that makes sense because so the legends are their heroes in a sense, the stories, the ones that resonate and they pass on generation to generation. Then it's funny because they have the same Bible stories, but they'll have them for two or three perspectives. Now, when he found stories that were enough the same, he incorporated those into one story. But when there are enough nuanced details from different Jewish families around the world or whatever, the way they changed the
sure.
story over time, he put in the different variations. And it's
Hmm.
amazing to see how people are carrying on. There's additional nuance, additional code, if you will, in the nuance of the stories. It's amazing to see in the book of Jasher how you see the original 12 sons of Jacob all had their own superpowers, right? One of them ran on the tops of the corn stalks like a deer, and what took a normal man 3 days to get to somewhere took him 3 hours, right? I mean, this is blatantly in the text, these epigenetic activations, if you will, apparently from our
And
ancestors.
do you think that's a true thing that happened, or do you think that's a story that we're supposed to
Metaphorical.
actually derive some learning from?
I think it's I think it's everything all the time, always, absolutely. I think at a core level, though, if you for me, I see that thing happen in ancient texts over time, and I see that get weeded out of science, where they separate us from the things we can do as being just the quantum dynamic alone, and also again, like we talked about before, 80% being junk DNA because they don't see it in coding proteins. Like I just think there's so many things that science is well, and it is like you've got Dan Winter, you've got Rupert Sheldrake, you've got these people that are out there that are very credentialed and experienced and been doing this a long time to know that reality isn't run how most people think it's run. You know, it's actually a lot simpler. And you get into the coherence and stillness and all. That's why we talk about the things we talk about. because to access all the cool stuff, I think comes from, like Frank was talking about, it's interesting. The farther you go out away from yourself, the farther away from you are to an external thing, anything. So when we go in, that we can unlock, that's why all those terminologies work, I guess, or finding places in your CPU, some cores in your CPU that you didn't know that were present there that you can go in. Now you may have to tweak the voltage and whatever so you don't overload it or whatever, but
that's
there's
another
more cores.
interesting thing to that is like when I did that originally, we were kind of like right at the front end of where we switched over from like we had the Pentium single core technology, and then we started adding more cores and we started doing multi-threading, and honestly like my brain came right along with it. Like my brain got faster as I went like, whoa, we're adding cores. Like, wait, how could I correlate that to my own brain? How's my brain like, how could I run 2 cores? And then multi-threading came and I was like, whoa, like now, okay, how could I do that? Because that's running many things through the same processor. And I was real like into the idea of like, okay, like multitasking, but in order to like you can't really multitask, but how can you get better at it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that like that idea of multi-threading just really like, and I don't have maybe all the bits and pieces in place because it was really more through just a process of contemplation of like what the implications of that is that like my brain was, or you know, a logical processing part of my brain was the CPU, but now we made CPUs better because one of the things that like I was definitely, I don't know if I really want to say told, but like that I had an understanding of from those experiences was that like as computers grew, that was also going to be like how my mind really, like that's how my mind worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all we would be able to do, and now I really look at it as that like I think we kind of created computers purposely expressing our mind, and that makes sense because we were like, well, at least like our logical part of our mind, because we were trying to create like this logical thinking machine, you know, but we really kind of created like a logical side of our brain, and then like you now have like quantum computing, which where we're really having the problem is with like these weird like variances and shit. And what we're basically trying to do is bring in like that intuitive illogical side of the brain, and it's very problematic when you try to mix it with logic because like it doesn't care about logic. You know what I mean?
How would you, okay, so then how would you even incorporate this question? So how would you, how one opens or creates new neural pathways and opening or connecting to opening our awareness, but especially with the dynamic of how do you incorporate the left brain, if you will, or the more logical side? How does that have to behave or whatever in some dynamic? How do you have to perceive that dynamic to actually engage?
Logic works the best if it has a very strict procedure that it follows. So you could like you can look at that through math, like some kind of equation. It needs to be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. If you do that, you always get the area of the triangle. But then that procedure being strict, like you could run it backwards and you can find other valuable information. You can take the outsides and operate on them properly with that, but you need to maintain a procedure with it. And logic is really kind of like all about procedures. To speak to like, I'm not sure, is this asking like how you open new neural pathways and how you open your awareness? Is that like, I'm going to go with, I think that's probably the question.
Sure.
Opening new neural pathways from the idea of neuroscience, as far as I understand it, is really, well, it's neurogenesis. The function of neurogenesis basically provides the opportunity for a new neural pathway to generate. Neurogenesis can be generated by a lot of things, just like running does that. Certain foods do it. If you want to know all the things that do it, definitely go read, because I'm not going to give a full list. But like really generating new neural pathways or generating anything with your awareness is about literally just like seeing new shit, just like doing new shit, doing more shit, do stuff you haven't
Try
done
new things
all the time. Like I could science the shit out of it, but there's no reason to science the shit out of it. It's like do new shit.
Okay, let me ask you, since we talked about that last night, let me ask you,
Just asking
do you
how
think,
can I or how can I get to will open the neural pathways. Yeah, literally, just what I just said. Just try new shit. Just all kinds of new stuff. If you haven't done it before, it could probably do that. If you're really passionate about doing that thing, I think it's more likely to do that because you'll invest more in it just because you want to. So just try new shit.
okay, so what do you think about where do you think consciousness or awareness, or if they're the same thing, maybe they're separate, actually reside in the body? So how much does your neural pathways matter? Does your awareness find resonance with that, or
I
what?
don't believe consciousness or awareness actually resides inside the body. Like
Elaborate.
that's not really how I would perceive it.
Mm.
Okay. Awareness really is just a difference, right? And the difference really happens at a center point. So this awareness sits at the middle. Consciousness is really the expression of everything. When we raise our awareness, we're basically able to see farther from the middle out or farther back in, however you really want to look at it. I think kind of there's both processes of that, and we could get into a lot of nuance there. But the awareness is something that just is. It's not really about it being located somewhere. Nothing is located anywhere without awareness to be located it by in. So the consciousness is just a thing that's always there. It's that potential that you see. That's all consciousness is. It's everything. It's everywhere. It's all the time. Nothing isn't that. All of it is consciousness. Some of it is made manifest, and in order to do that, it is observed, but it's observed from this awareness functionally. We play out kind of a pattern of that, a smaller fractal, where we then see our own observer effect and our own personal awareness. But it's not really actually our own personal awareness, it's basically an acting out of what really actually the nature is. But that nature is actually very simple and functionally vague. Like it's just a spot where isn't and is cross over one another. So you call this the place where the awareness resides. Awareness resides wherever it's placed functionally, though. So because it's a thing that's done, it's not really a thing that is somewhere. And awareness places itself to different locations in the consciousness to have experiences. And that, I think a lot of humans would like to believe that awareness is very much so like locked in a place. This is mine.
Mhm.
It's this, etc. I don't think that's true. I think it's very much so more borrowed. We kind of actually, in a certain way, like we luck out that it comes back as normal as it does every time we come
Mhm.
back to it. And it's
Okay,
not,
so
we
on
use
that
it as a
notion,
consensus position. And
yeah.
then
So
because of that, we attach to it.
so on that notion, would you agree with the metaphorical paradigm, I guess, and go ahead and adjust it as you would, um, that we are the TVs and we're the receivers, and that our consciousness is the projecting base signal from some place that is not solely contained within this physical vessel?
When we get into the we thing, that's like if we're really getting full value with that, that's what we
Yeah.
really are, right? And what we really are is all of that shit, the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
you're the system within which the potential for the awareness of consciousness resides, and thus the experiences that fall out of that possibility.
Yes.
So you're not in the system. You're not a thing in the system. You're
Hmm.
the machine functionally, and then the things transpire really actually inside of you, inside of your awareness. But what you
Right.
really are is like definitely not the body or anything. Like it's
Right.
much
Right. Right.
outside of that.
For sure. So, okay, so it's interesting. So
So
here's
I'd say it's
my
more like the environment. You're asking whether it's a TV or a receiver and da 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 da, and it's really more like the environment within which all of those things reside or could reside.
sure. Okay, so I think so. If I just processing out loud, I haven't actually processed through these paradigms in a while. Um, it seems to me. So what you're saying, like, I feel like what you're saying is like step 10. Like that's 1 to 10. That's 10. Like we are everything. All right, and
Sure.
we're so, but somewhere in between, we're in a body talking about enjoying things in a body being
Hmm.
one or whatever. No awareness of higher dynamics at all, or outside of this existence or whatever.
Right.
Um, So trying to flesh out some of the more details in between. So the nuances, the technology, if you will, for how does, and to me, okay, the reason I use human DNA skin suit, because if you've seen the video, um, I mean, this isn't the sole reason, but this is like a perfect, like, I don't need to explain any more beyond this. I feel like this makes it all make sense, or at least you can understand why it totally makes sense to me. So that there's a video they show of actual animation though, but of what they've recorded through electron microscopes and everything going on in your cells, the little factories in your cells, the little creatures like walking along your DNA, carrying things along,
Yeah,
and
I
then
think that's
like
cool. I know what you're talking about. It's like a protein carrying a sugar or something like that.
right, man, something crazy, right? So like,
It
but
looks like a whole animal world. You know what I mean? Like it's
but
all
think
of a
about it.
sudden like
There
it's
you can
robot
literally
animals.
see molecules stacked on molecules though, with awareness, with programming, right? To
Hmm.
do things, to take this, to sense,
Oh
to have
yeah,
sensory, whatever, to pick up sugar. They know to move it to this
yeah.
location.
They're
Like,
very procedural. They're logical.
and it's like a machine. It's like a factory. There are
It
processes.
is.
There's waste product. There's like all of it, right? So so that to me, no matter how organic we think we are, man, come on, we're machines, bro. We're just really advanced. Come on. Like really, yeah, I
Yeah,
know we're really good, but dude, we are advanced vehicles, if you will, created by some
yeah.
form of
And
higher consciousness.
I think at a certain level we are a machine that is like a stuff happens machine.
Okay, as a
It's just
person, you
very
think that
vague
stuff is a
like
person?
that. You know what's that?
Yeah. As you mean as a person, that we are a stuff happens machine?
A person is like, okay, if my camera is the possibilities for existence, and I'm
Yeah,
talking about that we're a stuff happening machine way up here.
yeah, yeah.
A person's like here,
Okay.
but
So then
you're
man,
not those things. You're the stuff happening machine. Like you're out here, but you experience all this stuff in here.
here you go. Take that one, Zach.
External environment to me is simply the reflection of the internal circumstances, emotions, experiences, programs, and beliefs. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like inside, we sculpt what we think the picture looks like. We project the picture out. We see the picture that reinforces the belief that we had inside. We believe we had the experience. We shoot it back as an experience that has basically been had. Voila, we've learned about basically a new experience, and the thing happening machine has done its job, and that's like pretty much how it happens. We sit in the
Yeah,
middle of that, but as what we really are, like we're projected into a space. Like I shouldn't be able to think about myself as a machine like that, or see these lower machines like that, unless I'm able to move dimensionally through the machine. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And
yeah,
if I'm able to move dimensionally through the machine, then I'm not the human, I'm not the cell, I'm not the thing outside of that. I'm the thing able to move through this whole thing, and that thing, that's very different. That's not like a, it doesn't have an identity. So
yeah,
anybody having an experience is having an experience that is being perceived by the thing that moves through the machine, by this
yes,
metaphor.
yeah,
So they're all the same thing, right? But that thing's functionally the most powerful thing in the machine because, well, Dan Winters does a good job of doing this. It's all about four-way wave conjugation. The machine has a constant wave of potential that sits inside of it. That doesn't make anything happen. Something happens when it comes in conjugation with a perpendicular wave, right? So you can look at yourself as being like as a machine where this is a wavy space and sometimes it pierces down through it. Voila, your experience. Or you can look at it as that it's like this and you kind of move yourself down along that, like tuning yourself or whatever. It doesn't matter. Both systems work. The idea is that you're coming into a cross, and this is really like the science spirituality crossover for me, haha, puns. But nevertheless, like this is where we get to actually understanding like why does everybody worship a cross? Why is it worthwhile? Right? Is because at really like the core, when this thing, what we really are, conjugates with what can be, something happens. And so everything comes from the cross functionally, but it
totally.
comes from this wave conjugation. So you're not this thing happening right here, really, and you're not
Right.
really like the potentials of stuff that can happen, and you're really actually looking at like you're not really even the thing that like tunes into it. You're even farther outside of that. You're the thing that's able to perceive the interaction of wave conjugation coming together, and then subdimensionally, or maybe in your perception of things it's transdimensionally, but through science of it, it sounds a lot more like there's implosion going on than explosion, so it's probably
Beautiful.
subdimensionally.
Cool.
Subdimensionally, you're collapsing into a space that you further and further immerse into, and as you get to deeper levels of intoxication, you identify with things that are architectures inside of those different dimensionalities. In your consensus reality right now, as anybody that would be watching this, you think you're a human, but that's just because of your tuning. That's just where you're tuned. Like, you're not that. That's the place that the machine is tuned to generate results. The one you're using, basically, if you still need to be something, like the idea that you need to be a something that does stuff is a weak, disempowered paradigm. That's bullshit. Your God's fucking false. Okay, like, I don't care which one you believe in, even if you think it's yourself. The idea that there is an identity that you are is completely disempowered to the idea that you are a void space within which potential transpires. You are not going to get to the same level of power as that with the idea that you have a shape. You need to be amorphous, nothing. The fact that you are no thing is way more powerful than the fact that you are something. That's just a
Yes.
thing you do. Like,
Yeah.
that's really like my belief on it. What you are is void, or said in the book of Amos, the day of your Lord will be a day of darkness. Someday when you come to really know God, you will see that that shit doesn't exist. And then you found him. Then you found it. That's the
Yeah.
day when you realize there is no actual answer and you're void. There doesn't need to be an answer. That's when we've actually gotten there. And if you haven't gotten there, you're in some process of getting there. I'm all for that. There is a very great way to go along things. The places where we do, the system works perfect and it's generating results. Multidimensional. Okay, we missed one of these. Like, God
Sorry.
being, functionally, I mean, or you're being God. You can run those words either direction that you want. The whole idea of God and being is a thing that, to my personal perspective, transpires inside of what you really are, which isn't a, it's not a thing, and it's not being. It's really, if we have to put words on it, it's like an isness. It's just what the shit that is, and it doesn't take form or anything like that. People put forms on it. There's
Yeah.
Mercury. So we program the water in the cells based off the emotions and what we ingest. Very, very good science to back this up. The work of like Dr. Emoto and stuff. Like, couldn't possibly
Yep.
agree more. I don't
Yep.
drink enough water, one, but like, I have spent a lot of time like structuring water,
Yep.
purposely like writing stuff on my water, all this stuff. Like,
Yep.
it
Me
has
too, man. A
noticeable
lot of that
effects.
shit. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
works.
Dude,
I
I've
don't
got
think you actually have to do that. Like, projecting just ideas and the idea that there's water in everything. I ran for quite a long period of time. I literally ate nothing but McDonald's. But every time I ate McDonald's, I very much so was like, this is exactly the things that my body needs all the time.
totally.
And people can, I mean, people can take this
No, you're right.
anecdotal as, or whatever they want. I really don't care, because I know
Yeah.
inside of my experience, I
That's right.
felt healthy as a goddamn ox, and I had eaten
Yep.
nothing but McDonald's for like 3 years,
Right.
like basically nothing but McDonald's the whole
Yep.
time. But I knew I was purposefully doing this, and I was really taking the time out to make sure that like this is what I believed about it. And I think like the
Yeah.
water in the cells, like, we're able to program everything, and we are that like kind of programmer of the whole machine. Kind of water is a thing that in this dimensionality we recognize as a carrier medium for the code. That's a
Totally.
place where we can put code, and we can interface with it with many different tools, whether it be our writing or projecting our thoughts or our emotions, whatever, to
Yeah.
rewrite that code and then reinterpolate that code into the system. And then that works better at that level. So like, I couldn't possibly agree more with that. Multi-dimensional, limitless creations that are ever evolving and ever changing. Yeah, exactly. Like, you're not something, because as soon as you would identify that thing, you're something else. You know what I mean? Like, then that's the cool thing, is that you're always something new. The
Yeah.
Jesus like resurrection thing, that like I had a real strong engagement with this as a byproduct of ayahuasca, which was a like opposite thing that I expected when like I was in this position. I was expecting, I thought I was expecting anything, and it was like,
Yeah.
oh, explore like Jesus's resurrection. But like the thing that was really profound to me was I recognized at one point in time that like every single day that I wake up, or even if I take a nap or whatever, and it got even farther, like every time I walk into a room, every time I blink my eyes, I have the opportunity to functionally like resurrect myself. And what would reality actually be like if I could bring myself every day when I woke up? I was completely new again. Like I didn't have anything that I remembered, anything that I believed, right?
Totally.
Like I had
Yeah.
no knowledge, I had no conditioning, I had no paradigm. There's no
Yeah. Yeah.
paradigm.
Yeah.
Every
It's the
time I
best.
woke up
The best
or every time
pursuit.
I blinked my eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like to me that like sat really deep. I was like, dude, like for sure, like resurrection technically a real thing. Like if I can wake up tomorrow after I go to sleep today and I
Mhm.
purposely feel revivified, like I feel like I have more life tomorrow, then maybe not in the format of like, oh my god, I was dead, buried in the ground, everybody knows I'm dead,
Right.
now I'm alive again. That level on a microscopic level, we're experiencing a level of revivification or a resurrection of sorts, and you can lean into this shit and like be a totally different person. You know,
Right.
like the
Well, I think,
hypnotizing yourself to sleep, so powerful, like so powerful. Like,
do and I know. So I know you've had a lot of practice this through your life, so it's not things you still engage in regular need to probably. But would you recommend is like good? I know we've talked about certain anchors and shit, but would you also recommend like binaural beats and things like that? Do you find that's really helpful for average the common person?
I definitely, I mean, like, I like them, but this is a space where anytime that I'm talking to anybody about using them, I tell them really like to follow their heart with them. Like, if you're
Yeah.
using a specific frequency and it's not making you feel better, like you're not experiencing a positive benefit from it, then
Yeah.
it's probably not the right one. If it feels negative, it's definitely not the right one for you.
So,
Like,
well,
whatever
it's
it is
funny.
right now, something about it.
It's funny. It's funny. I know why you say that, and it's smart to say. It's important to say it. One, it gives liability coverage. Like, okay, look, I'm going to teach you how to use tools. You got to use them. You're responsible for them. You got to know yourself, know your limits, right? Same thing with entheogens or help people through stuff. But then it's like it gets to a place where, for example, I one of the frequencies I found at one point was anti-parasites, right?
Sure.
And it went through. I mean, the different place I found, I read enough about it that it just made sense to me. I knew scientifically and understanding, so I listened to it, man, and I could feel it was painful in my neurology, but why? A lot of
Hmm.
parasites are in our gut, which has 400 plus million neurons. I could feel the difference internally. It wasn't me that was in
Sure.
pain or discomfort. It was something inside of me that did not like that. But
Sure.
here's what's fascinating about neurons, even in your gut. So we have they release their chemicals so they want their own food, or candida, for example, and it climbs up your throat at night and can create that white thrush in your tongue. It's actually
Hmm.
candida and parasites and things actually prepping your taste buds for what they want to eat. So like tongue
Hmm.
scraping is such a good practice. I've done it for a
Yeah,
few
they're
years
they're
now.
normalizing their food source on the palate. Like that's pretty clever.
But
It
no
that's
doubt, man. It's a little terrifying. Like when I first learned that, I'm just like, oh, and I went and saw my tongue the next day. One day it just happened to be bad because I was eating a lot of sugar and shit for a while. And like I just like it's that super sobering feeling. It's in my body. Like it's not like I can get away from it at all, but you have to
right.
you have to deal with this reality of what's going on, this
Well,
other
they're your friends,
organism
man.
inside of you.
You
Right.
got
So
so many
so
organisms inside you, man. Like that's
well so
another thing that I think is funny. People think they're a human, and a human's made up of like this huge architecture of all these like crazy parasites, funguses, bacterias, like even like what you were
massive.
talking about with like proteins
Right,
and
right.
shit. Like on that level, even there, they're like little workers. They got their own little lives going on and shit like that. Like, are you really actually a human, or are you like some weird walking
And
environment for some whole
then you find out
biosphere? Like, what the fuck is really going on?
Then you find out that science says that, I mean, it's true that less than I think out of all the cells in our body, including all the additional ecosystem and stuff that's in there that we just mentioned, that only I think it's 0.1 or 0.01% of all the cells in your body even have your DNA. Think about that shit.
Yeah, that's just too
What?
weird, right? Like you are
Right.
this person because of your DNA, but by the way, most of your cells aren't that. Like, what?
Right.
I
So
think we
Sam
have a
said,
misunderstanding about stuff.
well, okay, I agree. So Sam said it was the parasites plugged in screaming, no. which is true.
Yeah.
So what I changed my
Oh, I agree.
perspective on. So like I went from, and I think it's Dr. Oh, what is his name now? Here's the problem with like getting tons of information, saturating it in a way that like really helps me in my paradigms and interconnect things, and then I move on. I start to lose the. I mean, I used to be able to quote the Bible like pretty much front and back, right? I have a hard time
Sure.
remembering verse references and stuff. Anyway, so this guy's out in Hawaii, but he talks about terrain modification versus attacking parasites, and he's done all that. Now he helps people heal their body fasting. He has people out there for 3 week plus fasts and other stuff he does, and a lot of body work. He's a chiropractor, and anyway, he's got a lot of good, incredible. Dr. Robert Kassar, that's who it is, Robert Kassar. And he's got Earth Academy, whatever. They have products they sell and stuff that I buy a lot of supplements and stuff from them and whatever. Um, but he talks about terrain modification. So you're changing your diet, your lifestyle, your energy, your frequency, your intentions. You're engaging harmonic. You're trying to find symbiosis with them and not just kill them off. So you change your habits, then the negative dynamic, they will die off and go out naturally through your bowels and just eating, having regular
Right.
bowel moves and things. So you don't have to go to war with them. Now you can. I still do bowel
Right,
cleanses
yeah.
and things, but it depends on the time and what I'm going for. But I did change. I started incorporating into my meditations and visualizations and things, actually removing the parasites. And that's some really profound dynamics and cleansing them through this like golden light at that time and bringing them into harmony if they chose. Like I feel like there's a free will choice there, bringing them into harmony with something that was
Technical
symbiotic for
difficulties.
something that was symbiotic with my system. And so I would then put it back into my system, but now it's in symbiosis. So, and I've done the same thing too, man. I've done with McDonald's and stuff. Sometimes it's just like, look, man, I've still got emotional connections to food that I haven't fully dealt with yet. I'm definitely going to be eating shitty today. So I'm going to make sure internally, my internal disposition, there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's no bullshit. I'm fucking enjoying it because I'm transmuting that food into something positive for my body as I eat it. And eventually I would like to eat healthier and I'm pursuing that. But where I'm at now, I'm fully embracing it while transmuting it at the same time because I'm being intentional with what I'm doing now where I'm at.
It's interesting you bring this up. Like my whole approach to medicine is actually completely based off of terrain theory functionally. But like German New Medicine, which is a format of medicine of actually the guy who developed terrain theory as opposed to germ theory, he developed German New Medicine. And the whole idea is that there is like this psyche, mind, body architecture. And it's really like everything starts in the psyche. And then the mind interpolates it and creates a bodily reaction. And like it actually, you don't even need to do anything with the body. Actually, you can work completely with the psyche and move through that.
Have you seen the works? Shoot, eventually when my sister's helped me set up my place, which is awesome. I'm paying her to help set up. She's been great. She's been the perfect. I think my mom came over to help me once. Like it seems like I may be set up. I'm tucked in a corner of my room and this is fine, but the rest of it's a disaster right now. And it has been for a long time, but like it's just one studio with a loft and whatever. Anyway, but I'm going to be getting this. We'll be able to get this stuff pretty organized in the next week or two when the few other pieces of furniture I come in. But I got a couple books on what you're saying. Oh, shut the fuck up. I think it's right here. It's like, what are the odds? I got just random books here. I've got more than half elsewhere. Yeah, it's right here, right on. All right. So this is one of them. So it's the recall healing. Right? Pyramid of Health, Psyche, Autonomic Brain, Body, and then he's got another book it's more like a glossary, an index where he goes through symptoms and they trace it back to through all the different psychological dynamics they've done, tracing it back to like issues with the mother or like, but more specific, really nuanced shit like going on because, and they go through these affirmation guided meditation statements to release those traumas in your psyche, and the healing happens all the time.
So I basically have a book like that memorized that I learned just through experience, just understood, like heard the function of German New Medicine and just watched it like my whole life. But it's shockingly accurate, like shockingly accurate.
Dude, so I learned that in the Christian paradigm. There's some Christian dynamics that are really engaging more of the soberly because they don't believe in psychedelics, a lot of them, whatever, but massive interdimensional experiences and learning new ways of doing things, incorporating essential oils, is understanding frequencies, understanding all that. It's just within that paradigm and framework. But
so when I go even a layer farther, like anything that's not just literally like a psychic way of dealing with it. It's actually like, I don't think it's necessary, you know, like
Okay, so
essential oils, these kinds of stuff, like not even actually necessary.
in principle, but at the same time, I imagine you also see the value in being able to work that spectrum for both ends. So the somatic release, for example, certain positions people start crying, so they
It's
don't even have to
interesting, like
engage their
in a certain
psyche.
way, I understand where I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
On
yeah.
a certain dimensionality, I do agree. On another dimensionality, really, as far as like psyche stuff, my training comes from people who are like heavily involved with the Monroe Institute.
Yeah, yeah.
The upper levels of the work with the Monroe Institute, no, none of it matters as long as you can put all of your focus on it. You're good.
Yeah,
If you need to do a lot of rituals to focus on it,
yeah,
and that looks like essential oils, and I'm doing this, that, and the third, and it's all this stuff, and that's what you need to put your focus on it, then like, yeah, okay, more power to you. That's what you need to do. But if
no,
you've
okay,
trained
totally,
yourself and you can just put
totally.
all your focus on it, not necessary.
Okay, so now that being said, and I agree in principle, and I feel like I can do that maybe in certain ways better than others. Like again, like you're prepping and putting some context around eating the fast food, and like knowing some people might take offense to that perspective. So I understand, but literally believing for or changing my psyche enough to break through paradigms for urine therapy, for example, which I brought up the other night. So being able to find enough placebo belief catalysts, if you will, or enough essential oils or whatever. To me, that was science, that was history, that was documentation, things that showed me that, oh, this thing is a real thing that has stem cells that can heal any part of your body, and it has structured water nutrients that are 100% bioavailable. It's literally what your body couldn't process at that time. It's the best thing you could do. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry in China where they take the urine and sell it for the highest level facial products and beauty products in the world because of the stem cells, right?
Here we are
So
throwing it away every day.
right. And well, they know whoever they are, right? The nefarious, whoever, like whoever. I mean, it's like somebody, I don't want to get into details and dynamics. I've researched so much stuff. It doesn't matter. There are nefarious things about just follow the money, whatever. There's a good example, right? So they
Yeah,
know
you
the
want to talk
value of
about conspiracy theories? You need 3 words: follow the money. Okay, next topic. It's
totally,
very simple world. Follow the
absolutely,
money.
man,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Oh
so,
my gosh, are they gonna give us vaccines? I don't know. Guy in office owns not a vaccine. I'm gonna go with probably not.
yeah,
Yes.
and also, the stuff Bill Gates doesn't even vaccinate his own children. And if you hear, actually, it
Of
was
course
really
not.
interesting. The David Icke interview on London Real, which got banned by YouTube. But in part of that interview, he talks about the vaccination dynamic. But he said his sons, I think, are 40-ish now, but they were never vaccinated. They were healthier than all the other kids. They never got the flu. They never got all those other things. They got, I don't know if they got the measles or any of that stuff, early on or that shit. But their whole life, the point is, they've been a lot healthier. No allergies, no just stuff that all their friends grew
Yep.
up with, and most societies grown up with is normal now in a generation or two. By the way, I don't
Sure.
want to dive down that topic, but yeah, it's
Yeah, I don't know.
interesting.
I got really basic vaccination, and basically, for the most part, haven't been to a doctor since I was 3. Healthy as an ox. So
What was the last thing you said?
healthy as an ox. No
Yeah,
problems.
and
I
keeping
never
all
get
that.
the flu. I don't get fucking colds. My immune system is the strongest one in the group all the time. All the time. It's never not been that. And I hung around dudes like I lived in my car for years just climbing. I lived with dudes that just lived outside as well. Nope, still even higher. It has nothing to
Right.
do with that at all. Like, I don't know. I'm such a firm believer in the whole psyche thing. Like, if you cleanse your psychic realm, your
Yeah.
life gets so much better physiologically. Like,
Okay, so I
I
I
have
totally
people that I've
agree.
worked with that lose tons of weight. Like, it's the
Yeah.
best weight loss technique. Deal with your psychic trauma. That's the best
No
weight loss
doubt.
technique. There's nothing that actually comes close to it, because it will go off at a rate that you can't imagine, and you could actually do the wrong things during that, as far as like what you say for your body, and it will still come
Yeah.
off anyways. It doesn't matter. It will still go away anyways. Like, and it's
Yeah.
weird. Like, this sounds judgmental, but like, I don't really care. Fat people, a lot of psychic trauma. It's true.
Right.
Sorry. Sorry
Right.
to it. And it's like,
No.
I'm too skinny. That's also psychic trauma. I know. So before, if you want to troll on it, I know I got it too. But like, and there's both
Right.
sides of it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, overweight people. I mean, you can map all this shit through just watching a person's body. You can watch a person walk down the street and you can figure out what their entire psychological landscape is by never even talking to them. It's all apparent in the physiology. You just have to
Right.
take time making the correlation, which really, honestly, is going to take you a long time, probably. But
Unless you're born here just wanting knowledge and to learn and paying attention to data communication, because I understand that feel, bro.
yeah, you just keep watching, and then eventually you
man.
have some
Well,
understanding.
okay, you said something really important there though, which is hard for certain people to do. Watching and making correlations, overlapping spheres, right? So being free
Sure.
association. That's what Einstein did. That's all the genius did. It's free association, right? You
Yeah.
think he did the equation of relatively a man and a bicycle traveling at the speed of light. It's irrational. It doesn't even make sense. It's free association with concepts and ideas, and then you find correlations that other people may not find because intuitively and also I guess logically, you're letting go of enough logic to allow yourself to overlap spheres, even if a dot isn't apparent. There isn't an apparent dot to dot connection, which is probably the logic's primary problem. Not able to make that leap.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, if you always have to make a logical connection, you don't really learn as much out of anything, in my experience. In my experience.
Dude, I feel like it always ultimately limits. You have to, on some level, go with this. When I tell people, because I know just like way too much about way too much, and have been refining that down to just be more present. Like, all right, that's all old world stuff in a sense. I've got enough of my own base construct awareness of how I operate and exist in this world, and the frameworks within which to continue growing and dealing with more of my issues or different dynamics. And oh shoot, I was pulling to my chart to see if it helped pull my rabbit trail back. Not helping. Shoot, what was I saying?
Well, I was reading this comment in here, and it's I mean, it's just another example. Like, there's so many stories out there of people who have gotten through so much trauma and like literally like healed their entire life, and it has nothing to do with like the things people normally think it has anything to do with. It's crazy.
Right.
Like, I'm not able to say by law that I'm able to give medical advice, but I mean, the people that I usually end up working with, they don't really need to look too far for medical advice because we're like, oh, well, it's totally like this trauma coming up. And they're like, oh, shit, you're right. It's like, that totally makes sense. Like, it makes sense right away. What more do you need? You know what I mean? Like, it makes sense.
Right.
It's directly connected, you know? I have an injury with my left foot right now, and I know exactly why I have that injury with my left foot. You know what I mean? Like, I have stuff in my past that I'm like staying rooted into, and I wasn't really willing to take that step forward yet. And the way that I was engaging with the things that I was doing in my life right then, like I had the opportunity to be like working and going towards the thing that I wanted to do, but instead, in this specific situation, I was screwing around playing basketball. And like, next thing I know, like just being totally normal, like my foot basically like explodes, right? Weird, right? But like, I know why it happens. You know, it's energy and transmuting paths. So I mean, like, that's really what I'm saying. I mean, like, somebody that I know says like we stuff our issues into our tissues. You know, it's an energy that holds inside of us. When we transmute that energy out of ourselves, then we no longer have to store it in that modality anymore.
Are you familiar with abreactions, or the term at least? You might be familiar with the experience. So it's when, which is interesting that AB or abreaction, but it's a common example or good example is when someone who, excuse me, was strangled as a child and sexually abused and strangled, or some example, and they're going back through just even a talk session or whatever, and that memory is resurfacing. The actual fingerprint marks will show back up on the neck. It's an abreaction that happens in different places in the body, or pain in the body, right? Being able to sense pain in the body when certain topics come up in the psyche or dynamics, which I'm sure you've had. So I guess you're probably having that's probably a common experience, right? So people may have pain in their body on certain subjects or dynamics, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, if you know a person's psychology, you can know where they're going to get hurt.
Right, or where they were hurt, being able to reverse engineer that. And then that's what I was going to say. So it's interesting to be able to also work from the specifically from the logical or the physiological aspect without the psyche involved in the ways that works. For example, the if this is a technology we're embodying, and look, we talked about this based on my understanding of things. If there's lots of vehicles to have experiences in, the one I'm in primarily right now in my conscious hours of the day is Aaron Michael Kessler in the most advanced skin suit in the universe. It's a Ferrari. It's got all these buttons and switches all inside of it that I've just been told my whole life don't exist or aren't real, or you can't touch them, or they don't do anything. And here's what's interesting. I think because of the way time has changed, the expression of time and different transitions in universe and astrological dynamics and all those things, our epigenetic expression has changed. So buttons we did try before when we were younger didn't work. They will now. You know, I think there's things like that internally inside of us, our own internal stillness, psyche, but also internally exploring the vessel within which we reside. So when people fast, there's a guy, another YouTube channel, he has people out to fast at his place for weeks at a time. He does tons of videos on nutrition. It's just his life experience, but he does a lot of fasting. And when he got in a motorcycle accident and his hand was completely, the sinews were shredded and all this other thing, they said at best, you know, you'll be able to maybe grab something, but your hand's like lost functionality forever. And that's after they wanted to do all these surgeries and all this other stuff. That's probably gonna be like dozens of surgeries over time and whatever. So instead, he didn't do any of that. He didn't eat again until his hand was significantly better. He fasted for like 6 weeks and his hand was completely healed. Like the doctor's like, oh, this is amazing. We've never seen, you know, this go back so fast, like all that stuff. You know, like he has his own experience with that. That to me, like it just makes sense again as these bodies as a system, a process, a technology that we don't know enough about. And it's not like you have to be a doctor. People just they limit themselves from discovering it for themselves because, oh, well, I'd have to be a doctor. I've spent 8 years in medical school. Dude, most doctors, when it comes to nutrition and ways the body really works, are idiots, right? They know how to write prescriptions and they genuinely care about people. Fair enough. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying they're stupid in IQs. They're idiots when it comes to how the body actually works on so many levels because they don't overlap disciplines. And GPs, I think, are so often spread so thin, there's not enough connection to specifics. And I'm not crapping on the whole industry. It's a lot of it. They're the product of what they were taught. You learn how the whole AMA was created through the whole Rothschild-funded dynamic to get rid of the naturopaths and get rid of natural medicine. I mean, we understand the framework behind it. That's more what I'm talking about. It's what they've been ingrained with. You see the way they shit on Gerson therapy and all these other things that work. They talk about it being fraud science and all this other stuff. And it's deeply, incredibly scientifically documented. They just blacklist people. Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of what, just to put a context to all that.
And why is that even like, it's just so baffling to me that there's even like a group of people that be like, oh, we got to kill out the naturopathy. Like, I understand you want money, like that, I get it and everything, you know. Right. Like you want money, but like really, like you're gonna go like that far? That's the part that's really just baffling to me, is the lengths to which some people are willing to go. And I'm not talking the guy that's willing to like scam a dude out of $1 or, you know, sketch out on the contract or something like that. I'm talking about people who actually like establish large like systems that become like the overarching authoritarian structure for something, and then weed these things. Like, that's crazy.
Let me ask you something. So, and you're based on that too. So continue to think about it. Thinking harder about it and what you know and have experienced in life and whatever. What could possibly influence a person or a family, bloodlines of people, to perpetuate such a horrendous those types of systems? They've just transmuted in different ways over time.
Besides money?
Yeah, because you said even just for money, like to create those systems that would slaughter
people. Well,
it
seems ridiculous for money, but a lot of things, like I've watched people do a lot of stuff that I was like, wow, it's ridiculous you're doing that for money. And then there is a layer beyond that. Like resources are much more important than money. If you ever get enough money in your life, you'll learn that, you know, the money ain't really that thing. It's like really more the resources. So, and then beyond that, it's not really about resources. It's kind of about energy. You know what I mean? So you can, and just using that layer alone, and then you can pick those apart however you want. You know, the energy thing could be the reason why they try to control some kind of spirituality, or it could be any number of other things. You know what I mean? But there's all kinds of different ways where these different areas, somebody's trying to get something from there. You know what I mean? There's always, on any dimensionality, there's a reason why a thing could have an agenda, whatever it is. It could have an agenda, but I think that's kind of your basic progression. You know, it's like it's money, and then they're worried about resources, but then that resource gets kind of pretty damn specific because money is a resource. You know what I mean? Yeah. And energy is a resource, is money, but like it just gets more abstract. You know, And at a certain layer, then it's really more about the energy.
Okay, on a 3D level, so I think we talked about, have we talked about, so you're familiar with the Federal Reserve owning our currency, printing our currency, and that whole dynamic of follow the money, the world
Sure,
banking
yes.
system and all that? Okay,
Yeah.
did we talk about how Trump incorporated in the stimulus bill, he incorporated the Federal Reserve into the Treasury?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether I mean, we've talked about that before. I'm familiar with it, that he did
But what,
this.
okay, so all right, so you're familiar with that. I don't think a lot of people are, and if they do, I don't think they understand the implications. Right?
Sure.
So the Federal Reserve being, my understanding, and correct me in the nuances here, them being privately owned, they're just called the Federal Reserve. They're a privately owned company that has printed our money and controlled our money in the one world currency, the standard that we exist, which is USD for now. But and they sell it to our government at interest. So our currency in our wallet isn't even our government printed currency, who should be printing our own money for our citizens for free, or
Right.
at least on our taxes. We have to pay a
Mm-hmm.
private company interest to buy our money, right? So that's been outside controlling and financing both sides of wars, and there's other dynamics too. But that's the whole system. Like in whatever, it's in a lot of movies, man. It's real stuff. It's not just
Sure.
dramatized. But so that's finally been incorporated inside of our government. They're the ones who set the interest rates on mortgages. They control the market. So what do you think? And correct if anything, if I said something there, it's off. But what do you think the implications are of that going forward? What that's going to look like?
I mean, I don't think I understand the agenda of the people in office right now clear enough to like really know that. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
think
but
the movement of the past always seemed to be moving towards more like one world order thing, and there's ways you could abstract it that it is a play towards a one world currency, but like
mm,
I don't know. I mean, the Fed, like you were saying, is in a way a play towards a one world currency in and of itself.
right.
Yeah. So
Well, so do you think things are going to go to digital currency?
I think that at least a certain segment of people would really like that.
Yeah,
I think a certain other segment of people would like us to go back to using literally pieces of gold. You know what I mean?
right. Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think
yeah,
on both sides, if you want digital currency has more convenience but more room for foul play. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So people who are going to err on the side of convenience, they probably want these digital currencies. It's easy. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But people who want their money to actually be worth something rather than be worth what other people are willing to give you for it,
yeah,
they probably want to go the opposite way of that. Both of them work regardless. At the end of the day, technically, we live on an abundant planet where we don't even need this stuff. Like, if everybody was willing to just like,
right.
well, work with
Exchange
everybody else, like,
services.
there's not
Yeah,
actually any reason for that. Like one dude doesn't need like 3 yachts with 2 helicopters that, like he has a staff of 25 dudes to boat him around the Mediterranean. Like, you don't need that shit. Like, that's cool
yeah,
and shit, but like, you don't need that shit. Like, come on. And I'm not jealous. Like, if I had billions and billions of dollars, you wouldn't catch me in a fucking yacht and helicopters and shit. It's like I wouldn't have it. I wouldn't have it. Doesn't wash with me. I have no
right.
idea why anybody would even actually want that. Like, oh, it's lavish and shit and stuff, but like maybe like doing it once or something, but like, and
Yeah,
I just don't. And I understand, like, maybe if like that was your thing, but the people I'm talking about, that's not their thing. Their thing
yeah,
is like running huge businesses and merging giant corporations, and that's how they got like enough money to do that. That's not their
right.
thing. That's a thing they do. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
totally, absolutely.
And
So
like,
do
I just don't understand why a thing that a person does, like, how is it a logical system that a single thing that a person does is like, I buy a huge boat, right? Like a huge boat.
yeah,
That costs more money than like another person on the planet will make in like their lifetime, for
mm,
instance. Like, there's no, I just don't understand how this is in any way ever going to be like a balanced system with like that concept in mind.
yeah,
It seems
yeah, yeah, yeah.
purposefully rigged to be fucking broken. Like, it's
Right.
intrinsically flawed if people want to do shit like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and it's funny because I agree totally, and that to me is where people don't know what they don't know. The system's broken. Like my parents, for
Sure.
example, my stepdad and my mom, they own a really nice big boat. that they've had. That's been his thing. He grew up on the water. He built a business from the ground up. He's very conservative, very Republican, very, and rightly so, in his own experiences and his own hard work. And, start a business from scratch, a business that I'm working for that's done very, very well. And like, he loves the water. That's his thing, man. That to him, that's more than just a thing, like it's his thing. But but I get what you're saying at a core level, just that the culture is so fucked up that that's even like a normal option for people on some level,
Yeah,
right?
it's a
That's
thing
even
that like in many ways, like, and it doesn't have to be specifically the boat, but we're talking about like the lavish desire. Call it a
totally
lavish desire rather than a boat. Like, well, especially in America, I understand we come from privileged land. I'm kind of opining on like, why is there a fucking privileged land? Like,
right.
America's not better than the people of another place. That part of the earth is not worse than America. Like, why is there a privileged situation? It doesn't really make any
Totally.
sense to
And so,
me.
like,
Like,
to
I
me,
understand why it's become that way. I've spent a lot of time looking at that because I've asked this question forever, but it doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah.
right. And I like the paradigm that fits with me, that I use the terminology of, that we're bringing the Hopi fifth world of peace.
Hmm.
That the rainbow children, that whole dynamic. I mean, all that makes sense. Makes sense with the 1,000-year reign of Christ and all that other stuff too. But in that dynamic, what that looks like practically to me, it seems the finding your tribe, right? Finding your community and building
Sure.
a community, whatever that looks like. I mean, yeah, for some people, it could start with your friends in your neighborhood and that stuff, but a lot of us, it's probably not your neighbors. That your real community, where your heart finds a resonance, where your heart finds rest, whatever that means to you.
Yeah.
Some level of like just connection, whether it's digitally through groups. That's what's great. It's part of what we're building here organically, just through having some kind of space to have these conversations, and whoever comes, and attracts, and those things happen in those ways. But as we begin to do that on the earth, whatever that looks like, getting those communities more and more away from the global systems, there'll be, I mean, it's be a process of transition. I mean, it's gonna be hundreds of years. The texts talk about there'll be hundreds of years of transition. That's why it's not 1,000 years from the get go. Everything's awesome. In that
Sure.
dynamic, the world's in chaos, World War III, the apocalypse, but people's paradigms and perspectives are so off. It literally is going to take several generations. I think, what was it, Niels Bohr, or I think it might have been Niels Bohr. He said there's a quote, something to the effect of, basically, the only way to teach a new the only time a new paradigm, a world changing or major belief changing paradigm actually comes into play, or is accepted as truth, is once the existing generation finally dies off, because it can be
Yeah.
so hard
There's a,
to
I
accept.
don't remember who came up with that, but there is that idea. Like, um, well, if you look into kind of like the truth about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, things like this, there's a real good reason for Japan to like accept that what happened there was what actually kind of really went down there, when really kind of like that actually wasn't what went down there. Japan didn't surrender because of atomic bombs. That's kind of the short
Uh-huh.
and simple of that one. But
Yep.
a lot of this, like, if you explore that, this comes into play a lot. The idea that you need to basically wait until a whole generation goes away in order to properly like scrub some kind of information like that, because
Yeah.
the people, okay, if you want to remove a person from history, the person who you want to remove from history, you can't try to start removing them from history until everybody that could have possibly known them is gone,
Right.
and then
Right.
you can start. Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting because that's also like some of the other practices I do, supplemental practices, is turpentine and sugar cubes. Have you heard about that?
I haven't heard about someone using that.
So turpentine's pure pine distilled pine spirits, and you can actually get it from Home Depot. You just have to verify. I think Dr. Jennifer Daniels, I think is her name.
Uh-huh.
Um, she's a doctor, and she realized through her own practice that she was eating a whole, I don't know, if a whole foods diet or whole vegan diet, I don't know, whatever. But it changed,
Uh-huh.
like, cured tons of her issues. So she started recommending it to clients. And so and she would give it to them with the option of, here's the prescription I'm supposed to recommend to you, that this can help with these symptoms and whatever. But I found if you can, this diet, it seems, will likely resolve the issue, whatever. So more and more patients were healing themselves, basically changing their diets and whatever. And the pharmaceutical companies came to them and said, because they saw that her pharmaceutical sales were down from year to year or over the course of that next year and 2 years, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she explained to them what it was. Like, I've been giving them the option because legally, how fucked up is this? Legally, she's obligated to give them certain prescriptions when they have certain symptoms, or through the whole
Yeah.
insurance dynamic. Like, that's so fucked.
I
But
have an
like,
uncle that was like he was a general practitioner and doctorate, he's a doctor,
yeah,
and nevertheless, like he spent a lot of time talking to me about like this prescription kind of shit. So like it's so fucking baffling to me to hear that from some guy. Like he was the guy who worked like that for a period of time, you know what I mean? And then he
no
even like
kidding.
worked up being like medical director at hospitals and shit, and seeing even at like he was the guy that the pharmaceutical rep came and talked to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so
And these
give me
kinds
some
of things.
stories then. What's coming to mind, like about what really happens in that industry? It's nice to hear firsthand stories.
Well, I mean, really, the whole thing about it is that really at the point where I quit caring, I guess. I like when you say that, I'm like, well, I don't have like some crazy stories to tell about it. Just that it's incredible how much specific things are getting pushed just because there's like kickback around that, and because there's some type of, well, the hospital is owned by this company and this company's decided to go with these specific people, so like you're going to see these reps and they're all going to come in, but like you're not actually even making a choice, like these are the ones that we're going with. And then they
Yikes.
push these specific things, and it's just, how can you possibly believe that there's a situation going on where like, yes, this doctor's diagnosis of my child having ADHD is completely legit when he's getting paid to prescribe Adderall.
Well,
Like,
and then he's
the fuck is
told that
that?
they're told that like this is the official medical literature. Even when they're doing their own research, that's the problem. We see how slanted the studies are when they do their own research. Even that it makes sense to them that these drugs are effective in these ways, so they actually believe they're giving them beneficial drugs. I don't believe doctors are doing this maliciously. All of them, obviously, there's some that have been proven to know they're getting kickbacks, and they do it for that reason. They don't give a fuck. Like
Sure.
that happens also, but it's a
But
spectrum. Most
is it
doctors,
fair to us to be like some of the people? Okay, a doctor, right? Like this is the height
yeah,
of knowledge. We go back to the thing where we actually like started earlier. This is so perfect because I do actually need to go and get to sleep earlier tonight
cool.
after this.
Yeah.
But standards again, is it acceptable as a culture that the standards of our doctors or something like that, someone who practices the high arts, would be like that ignorant that they wouldn't know like this doesn't actually fucking work? Like, come on. Like,
Right.
I don't think that that is an acceptable excuse. I feel better with the guy being in the seat that's taking the kickback. At least he knows what to do that's like good for himself. He's like, I fucking make more money for this. Like, all right, I'll do that. That says nothing about his intelligence that isn't positive, technically. The person that goes like, I have a fucking doctorate from some school. I spent like $200,000-$300,000 on getting this degree, and I was supposed to go to school for 8-12 years, what the fuck ever. And like, I can't, I now I'm playing some like the ignorance card, right? Like,
Right.
oh well, I didn't know. Like, you're the person in culture that like needs to know shit, that needs to like
Did you
set the
know?
bar for common
Did you
sense,
know that only in the United States and New Zealand is it legal for pharmaceutical companies to market directly to the consumer? Only in
the
those two countries in the
the
world.
only thing that surprises me about that is that like New Zealand is, but Australia isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because
Like,
in Australia, man, it's like we think America's bad with some of this Big Brother shit and whatever. Man,
shit.
Australia's been the testing ground for a long time, man. Like,
Australia started out as a prison colony when the
I
Western
know it.
world moved into it, anyways. So I don't think it ever
Western
actually
history.
changed. It
Did you
turned
know there's
into a better format of
dude, there's
prison
this
colony.
I got this book right here. I'm glad that just happened to be handy. Oh, it's funny. I also have because I haven't dove into it yet, but I know you were talking about Born, but Joseph Campbell and are your cameras off,
Everything
by the
I've,
way? Your camera's off, right?
yeah, I'm walking around and shit. Everything
Oh,
that
it's
I've
fine.
ever read of Joseph Campbell, which isn't a lot, has been
Uh-huh.
great, but I've hardly read anything. It's so weird. Like, that's definitely one of
Yeah,
those
yeah.
writers that if I was reading more books, I'd be reading more Joseph Campbell for sure.
Okay, so there's this one though. So can you see the screen though?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Stephen and
shunned.
Evan Strong shunned.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a really good podcast. He's done a great job for like 10 years. He's probably the best interviewer, one of the best interviewers that I've ever heard. And he just has developed it on his own in his bedroom. Now he's running all this thing. But it's Higher Side Chats with Greg Carlson.
Sure. Okay.
Have you ever heard his
I don't think
stuff?
I've seen any of them. No.
Dude, I've had a paid prescription for him for several years because he does a really good job. He'll edit his 2 to 3 hour shows with the guests down to an hour for YouTube or for the free version, and then he does the extended version with a paid subscription. I think it's $8 a month or $25 a quarter, or I don't know something, but like, which is it's fine. They're so well done. He does like 5 a month. And he's such a good interviewer, and he does the best introductions I've ever heard. He really reads the person's material. If they do a lot of online interviews, he watches a lot of them. Like, he knows the person really well. He's like, anyway. So I'll plug that because I love plugging people who are doing a good job, man. But he interviewed this guy on his show. This guy was, I believe, a professor at one of the Australian universities, found out it was all bullshit, basically, and started to teach the original truths. And he got expelled from university for teaching not their history, all the bullshit like that. So he began to work with the Aboriginal tribes. And this goes into like 10 proofs that 10 things alone, which should make us re-question what we know as our 6,000-year history and just what we're told about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So like, the DNA doesn't trace back to the Adam and Eve DNA. It's not part. There's the Aborigines. They have structures there that are clearly at least like 40,000 years old based on all the testing. They just won't release to the public and whatever. They've been out there and tested all that. They've got all these different dynamics, and they talk about 50,000 years ago as they trace their city, the Aborigines, that they lived in crystal cities, and technology was water and crystals, which is interesting. So we were talking about that too.
Yeah. It's definitely a weird situation, and I think like the really weird overlay, given like the current state of the world, is that if you take the time to dig into world history, like there's been so many cultures that have been just utterly disrupted by something else moving in on them, and then we experience kind of like a time right now where like the way of life that we want to live suffering a bunch of disruption, and it's like you can't let this happen. Like you know they killed off like whole tribes and continents of people and like just huge swaths. Not necessarily the same people that are around right now, but people who move the same way. And
Yeah.
if it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, like it's probably a fucking duck, guys. So like,
So would you call that a cultural meme?
in a
Moves the
certain
same
way,
way. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it really is. You know, it's still it's this thing with it has too much power, and when it has too much power, it does things that are totally despicable. You
Are
know
you
what I mean?
familiar with the monkey banana experiment where they put monkeys in a cage and they put a banana hanging from the ceiling and they put a ladder going up so you can grab the banana. But anytime he'd go up and grab the banana, they'd fire hose him down. And they wouldn't just fire hose down the one that did it. It'd fire hose on
Why
all
do
the
we
other.
test things like this? Like it's that poor monkey, dude. Like what
I
the
know.
fuck?
I know. It's funny because the era we live in, it's like I have to dissociate from the horror of the relevant studies that we have because they reveal our own psyche. But it's like, yeah, it's so fucked up, man. It's so bad that like
My
I'm
mom was
excited for that
super
stuff
against
changing.
like animal testing and shit when I was younger. Like
Totally.
I was getting taken to like PETA rallies and shit when I was younger.
Throwing
Like she
blood on
was so
people. You
against
throwing pig
it.
blood on people,
No, I never went that hard. I kind of wished we went that hard at times, but
or
we never
paint.
did.
I guess you wouldn't want to hurt an animal, but like,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, um, so they'd spray the
Anyways, the
monkey, and
monkey
then
experiment.
yeah, and so eventually everyone in there, though, anytime would go for the banana, the other monkeys would tear and claw at them. They would not, so nobody would want to go for the banana because nobody would want to get sprayed or have everybody get sprayed. And then they would pull the monkeys one by one until none of the monkeys in the kennel had been sprayed at all. Yet if any monkey tried to go up the ladder, they would claw them and pull them back down.
Wow. Like it just passed along the activity of pulling them down from the ladder.
Right. Well, just and so, yeah, and if you put this metaphorically into cultural trauma, keeping us restricted into only believing what we're told to believe, what's out there. They're like, well, the doctors know best, like, and
Honestly, I'm
without
gonna
doing your
go
own
meditate
research.
on
And
that in a
all
certain
right,
way. Because like I've
yeah,
thought about in ways how like, well, a lot of the ways that some people are acting at this time, they're like policing the citizens are trying to police themselves in certain ways. And like,
yeah,
is one thing for me to have been, I've thought about it from like, that's the same thing that happened in say like the Nazi regime. But that doesn't work very good for me because I have like there's certain ways where I've kind of like collapsed that part of the world where like I don't see the Nazis the same way as the other way, but I do have this like emotional polarization about the monkeys. So to like dive into the idea that like at this point in time, I think we've had so many free thinkers knocked down going after the banana, the metaphorical banana, that now we actually have a bunch of people who try to tear down the monkey that goes after the banana, regardless of whether anything is going to happen there. And I think that's just ridiculous. And I would like to go out on that. And it's 3 hours, 33 minutes, and 33 seconds since we started when I said that. So now I'm definitely leaving.
All right, man. Hey, sleep well. We're doing this every day. I'll do it. You go do your thing. I'll do a little closing
8
thing.
o'clock. If you watch this far tomorrow, we shoot to start at 8 o'clock. If it doesn't happen, just wait longer.
Let you know.
Just wait longer.
We'll be there. We'll put it in social media. Yeah.
All right.
Cool. All right, man.
Craig, it's good to see you. Thanks for dropping your comment. Yeah, agree with you entirely. So we'll see you guys around. See you next time. Good talking to you, Aaron. We'll see you later.
All right. Yeah, I love you, Zach.
Love you too. Goodbye.
Bye. All right. Wow, big screen. Okay, so yeah, Craig, absolute history is filled with cultures being overthrown and the knowledge of that age being lost. Yeah, there's so much. Owen Willis said, "Love, love, love." Well, he'll get that tomorrow. There's so much, man. This stuff is really good. So there's a 3-hour interview with this guy. That's awesome. So you hear a lot of it, and then there's good books out there and material. But you start hearing that there's a lot of, even in the Native American tribes, where the elders are coming out to tell their story, and a lot of them it's interesting because they go back to the Star Peoples, right? Some of the ones talk about specifically the Pleiadians, I believe, but it's a connection, interesting connection. One, beyond our 6,000-year history, because as I've seen it, that the religious structures and institutions have created frameworks, and even the texts they've selected to be canonical in the narrative, it's helped create. And if you want to get into the Jesuit dynamic and just all the way up where they influence a world belief system, and the reason that the even upper echelon, upper elites, the ones that the pedophilic dynamic that's gone on for 6,000, I mean more than that, but if we put it in the 6,000-year context, they follow the different traditions of like worshiping Moloch and passing the child through the fire and a lot of the things, because they're amplifying those realities, those real energetic systems, entities and things, if you will, from their repetitive belief in it and active practices ritually in that dynamic. So anyway, you see that part of their agenda is creating a belief system that we, in general, either think the world is infinitely old and people are kind of open to, we maybe came from aliens, whatever, but we're still caught up in the systems within our structure. Nobody's seen aliens land here, regardless what you believe. Well, not no one. There are many. I totally take that back, and I hope to be one soon. In a positive way, not in the negative ways that happened earlier on in the 50s, and there's a lot of different dynamics there that are other topics for like tomorrow night, probably, who knows, whatever. My point is, there's so much history that's lost. There really, really is. And so just to validate what you're saying, amplify what you're saying. Yeah. So, all right. On that note, I've also got, I guess, one more book that is fitting with this. This would be Greg Braden, which is Greg Braden, Joe Dispenza, and Bruce Lipton are all super good buddies. And they'll have their own really amazing material. So the spontaneous healing of belief, which is another dynamic. He gets into the same thing with Joe Dispenza from his own way, and that's what I was going to say earlier. So Joe Dispenza, who coined the term "you are the placebo," I believe he's in a motorcycle accident. His spine was shattered in a bunch of places, and he was never going to walk again. He was likely going to be a vegetable, but he definitely would never walk again. And I believe he's in the hospital for 3 months or so, or the last 3 months of his stay or something. It took him. He decided, based on growing up in his past experiences, he had a belief, or at least a theory, right, that our thoughts create reality and that we can manifest healing through the visualization. And he spent those months like mapping out his body, like going through, getting a bunch of pictures of healthy spines, all those different things. I'll post links to the books. Cool. I will do that. And then also looking for some good books to read. Could you recommend a few, or maybe post a list on Facebook? That would be amazing. Good vibe, lots of love. Yeah, okay. Maybe I can do that. But well, maybe we can specify. I've got a lot of good books on a lot of different things, or a lot of different thoughts. So maybe give me a specific framework, or topic or subject. I was saying, okay, so Joe Dispenza, so it took him like 3 months, but he was able to, he's totally fine now. His spine's totally healed. He's walking Joe Dispenza is his own industry. All the stuff he's done, it's really good stuff, really good material. So that's his story. Excuse me, him coining the phrase, you are the placebo. And this is podcast number 2. I can't believe we're doing this every day. This is like, it's going to become a thing. Like getting a new habits, like that's very odd for me doing something every day. And when it can go on for almost 4 hours, we'll see how that goes. You're going to see us like eating food on screen, just like doing stuff, which actually might be kind of a cool dynamic. So appreciate everyone being here tonight. 6, we have 6. All right, record high. Which is awesome. It's cool, man. We're happy to have the conversations, regardless of how many people are watching. We're trying to find ways to get in front of more people, just interact with more people. I think they're cool conversations. And think the dynamic Frank and I had going, all 3 of us, when all 3 of us were on screen, was really cool. So it's awesome, man. We live in an era where this is doable, and it's cool when you can feel the conversation more like conversations that we know we're having in front of other people. And then you get in the flow. It's okay, trying to create that flow state of all right, guys, let's just talk, man. Really, let's just chat. Maybe just energetic, setting my intention that way or whatever, and then seeing cool places that we go into. So anyway, maybe we'll see some of you tomorrow night. Gosh, it's what, 12, almost 12 here, a.m. Seattle. I don't know if I've said that or posted that. I'm in Seattle, and then and then Zach's on the West Coast too. So we're in the area. Let's see. Interested in anything really? Quantum physics, philosophy, healthy, spirituality, anything. Can't wait for this one. Okay. Fair enough. I will figure out a list, or I'll intuitively tune to some books for you. Willow Beavers. How's that sound? Sounds good. All right, I'm starting to get tired. Okay. Everyone have a good night. And we will hopefully catch you tomorrow. Take care.